Book 9. In the One-Eyed Giant's Cave. Time for Odysseus to do the great yap. The great yappening has arrived. Odysseus, the great teller of tales, launched out on his story. Alcinous, majesty, shining among your island people, what a fine thing it is to listen to such a bard as we have here. The man sings like a god. Because of course he does. That's basically Homer's self-insert character. It's great. Never forget the Homer self-insert character, which is how I like to read it. The crown of life, I'd say. There's nothing better than when deep joy holds sway throughout the realm, and the banqueters up and down the palace sit in ranks, enthralled to hear the bard, and before them all, the tables heaped with bread and meats, and drawing wine from a mixing bowl, the steward makes his rounds and keeps the wine cups flowing. This, to my mind, is the best that life can offer. But now, you're set on probing the bitter pains I've borne, so I'm to weep and grieve, it seems, still more. Important that he's talking about, like, weeping and grieving, this kind of language he's using. There is, even with stories of Kleos, and they're very closely linked with Kleos and kind of the kind of epic empathy, if you will, of these stories. There's grief, profound grief. Many of these tales do involve profound grief because so much of the Greek hero is about, like, chasing the perfect death, and your Kleos often comes kind of in the moment of your death, and, like, how you die, when you die, where you die, all those things. So obviously, grief is a huge part of the epic story, and ultimately these tales of Kleos. Homer, weeping and grieving. Me, mood. Yeah, it's a mood. It seems still more. Well then, what shall I go through first? What shall I save for last? What pains the gods have given me my share. Now let me begin by telling you my name, so you may know it well, and I, in times to come, if I can escape the fatal day, will be your host, your sworn friend, though my home is far from here. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, known to the world for every kind of craft. My fame has reached the skies. So, the cool thing here is, so every kind of craft. I'm pretty sure the word used here, specifically here, but in general, the word for, like, craft, for thinking, and intelligence in that way, is this word called metis. It's very much tied to the Kleos that Odysseus achieved at Troy. As he says, my fame has reached the skies. He has achieved Kleos at Troy. Now, what we're going to see throughout the Odyssey, and especially even through this book with some instances we have here, that even situations where this metis, this craft of Odysseus, helps advance his nostos, aka this homecoming journey he's on, as well as his, ability to think, this word called nous, it does not actually advance his kleos that he gained in his kind of epic exploits at Troy. Ultimately, his kleos is linked directly to the completion of his nostos. So, like, his kleos is kind of in a holding pattern here. So even throughout his journey, all of these cool things he does is, like, it doesn't matter if you don't actually complete your nostos. Why is Odysseus, in his consideration of what order to tell a story, not considering linear storytelling, is non-linear storytelling that ingrained in the culture? Non-linear storytelling and stories within stories, what are often called micro-narratives, are very common in epic poetry. So it's not unusual to kind of start in the middle of the story. You could even look at later Athenian tragedies. You get essentially one of the great tragedians being Aeschylus. He has this one piece called The Persians. I believe it's one of his earlier works, and it's telling about, like, the Persians after their great defeat. I believe it's Salamis by the Greeks, and it's sort of told linearly, but there's almost sort of flashbacks, and so, like, non-linear storytelling was not that uncommon, especially when you've got stuff like omens and prophecies coming in all the time. How do you spell that? Metis. So, M-E, and if you can, put a dash over that E, T-I-S. Metis. We're going to probably talk about that word in a little bit. Nearer towards the end of this book when we talk a bit about the Polyphemus encounter. And in case Yeah, it's Metis. The E should have a long dash over it if you want to be like super correct. Yes, in media res is a very well-known technique for a reason, and it was very much used by the Greeks. In media res and also the Deus Ex Machina. Especially the Athenian tragedies use a lot of the Deus Ex Machina. Ah, Mariana, are you here? Yes. Good. I hadn't seen you in the chat before. I'm glad you're here. Yay, thank God. Thank God. And Metis, yes, like Athena's mother. The name and that word are interlinked. So yes, achromatic count correct. Reach the skies. Sunny Ithaca is my home. Atop her stands our sea mark, Mount Neriton's leafy ridges shimmering in the wind. Around her a ring of islands circle side by side. Dulichion, Same, wooded Zakynthus too. But mine lies low and away, the farthest out to sea, rearing in the western dusk, while the others face the east and breaking day. Mine is a rugged land, but good for raising sons, and I myself, I know no sweeter sight on earth than a man's own native country. True enough, Calypso, the lustrous goddess, tried to hold me back, deep in her arching caverns, craving me for a husband. So did Circe, holding me just as warmly in her halls. The bewitching queen of Aea keen to have me too. But they never won the heart inside me. Never. So nothing is as sweet as a man's own country, his own parents, even though he's settled down in some luxurious home, off in a foreign land and far from those who bore him. No more. Come. Let me tell you about the voyage fraught with hardship Zeus inflicted on me. Homeward bound from Troy. The wind drove me out of Ilium onto Ismaros, the Cicones' stronghold. There, I sacked the city, killed the men, but as for the wives and plunder, that rich haul we dragged away from the palace. We shared it round, so no one, not on my account, would go deprived of his fair share of spoils. Is Odysseus saying Circe also wanted him as a husband, not as a lover? Yes, essentially she wanted to keep him there on Aea, and he refused. Correct, Clover. And also, yes, he's being very quick in talking about them raiding Ismaros. Again, raiding culture in the Bronze Age, very common. He has the epithet meaning sacker of cities. There's no, concentrated dominant naval sea power that's, patrolling the seas to essentially try and cut down on the idea of this sort of sea raiding culture. So Bronze Age especially, tons of it. Tons and tons of it. Then I urged them to cut and run, set sail. But would they listen? Not those mutinous fools. There was too much wine to swill, too many sheep to slaughter down along the beach, and shambling longhorn cattle. And all the while the Cicones sought out other Cicones, called for help from their neighbors living inland, a larger force, and stronger soldiers too, skilled hands at fighting men from chariots, skilled when a crisis broke to fight on foot. This means they were very good fighters. If you're fighting in a war chariot, again, horsemanship, highly prized among the Greeks. Out of the morning mist they came upon us, packed as the leaves and spears that flower forth in spring, and Zeus presented us with disaster. Me and my comrades doomed to suffer blow on mortal blow. Lining up, both armies battled it out against our swift ships. Both raked each other with hurling bronze lances. Long as morning rose and the blessed day grew stronger, we stood and fought them off, massed as they were. But then, when the sun wheeled past the hour for unyoking oxen, the Cicones broke our lines and beat us down at last. Out of each ship, 6 men-at-arms were killed. The rest of us rode away from certain doom. The punishment for piracy. Divine storm! It's so true. From there we sailed on, glad to escape our death, yet sick at heart for the dear companions we had lost. But I would not let our rolling ship set sail until the crews had raised the triple cry, saluting each poor comrade cut down by the fierce Cicones on that plain. So the raising of the triple cry, this is a funeral rite, presumably some kind of farewell to the dead. The idea likely being if you're crying out 3 times, it'll ensure that the dead will hear you on their way to the underworld. That's what this seems to be. Again, religion and the rituals associated with ancient Greek polytheism were highly localized, but something like that was probably pretty similar across the different city-states. Is out of each ship 6 men-at-arms were killed non-literal? Just meant to tell you the amount killed. Non-literal. Clover, what exactly do you mean non-literal? It's just telling you that 6 men from each ship. Oh, like as in it wasn't exactly 6 from each ship, or like he's just giving you kind of an overall number versus exactly 6 men from each ship were killed. Unsure, actually. How did they raid without violating Xenia? Xenia's not at play when you're raiding. You're in combat. Again, raiding culture was super common. It seems to have been something that was a part of their culture even. So kind of Xenia doesn't really come into play because you're just landing on their homeland and just raiding the place. You're not approaching as a guest in their house. Yes, that's what I meant. Okay. Yeah, imagine Troy, 12,000 BCE. We're high on victory, then got our asses kissed by locals who didn't appreciate us taking their stuff because we dawdled. He was trying to get, the idea is you raid, you get your shit, you get out. Whole point there was Odysseus was like, I kept saying, hey, we did the raiding, we got our shit, let's get the fuck out. Why aren't you wanting to get the fuck out? Why aren't you listening to me? He's also noted, I made sure everybody got their share. He's noting that early. Because it's going to come back when we get to Aeolus. He's setting up that plot point early. Now Zeus, who masses the storm clouds, hit the fleet with the north wind, aka Boreas. A howling, demonic gale shrouding over in thunderheads the earth and sea at once. And night swept down from the sky, and the ships went plunging headlong, our sails slashed to rags by the hurricane's blast. We struck them, cringing at death, we rowed our ships to the nearest shoreline, pulled with all of our power. There, for 2 days, 2 nights, we lay by, no let up, eating our hearts out, bent with pain and bone tired. When dawn with her lovely locks brought on the 3rd day, then, stepping the masts and hoisting white sails high, we lounged at the oarlocks, letting wind and helmsman keep us true on course. And now, at long last, I might have reached my native land unscathed, but just as I doubled Malia's cape, a tide rip from the north wind drove me way off course, careering past Cythera. 9 whole... Oh, is there a reason they didn't acquire supplies from Troy before departing? Was it too wrecked from the war? They did have supplies. They just used them up. They raided mostly kind of because they wanted to. But yeah, sure, for supplies. And also, yeah, Troy was pretty wrecked. Also, it's being divided amongst everybody who's there. So it's not just Odysseus, remember. There were hundreds upon, I think even supposed to be tens of thousands of Greeks were there to fight. So you gotta divide it up between all of them. Is this storm the one Athena and Poseidon created because Lesser Ajax was a dumbass? Good question. No. That is a different storm. This is implied to be sent by Zeus, not by Athena and Poseidon. Was demonic an actual concept in ancient Greek, or is that translation? Pretty sure that's just translation. The idea of, demons, I think, doesn't really start appearing in Greece until later. And then, where's Malia's Cape? Malia's Cape, I think, is in the south, but let's actually take a look here. Keeping in mind, I will say, Homer's understanding of Western Greek geography is tenuous at best. He doesn't always get it right. So Malia's Cape. Cape Malias is, I'm going to save an image. I was going to say, it is, can I put an image in the chat? Is that possible? I can't. Okay. Well, in that case, basically, imagine Greece, like kind of before. So you have Greece, and it's also got the little island down under it, like really like the kind of almost probably the southernmost point of Greece. Essentially, it's a peninsula and a cape in like the southeast of the Peloponnese, so still kind of eastern. Maps are a little rudimentary. I wasn't paying attention. Why does Zeus send a storm again? Because he can. Because Zeus sends storms because he wants to. YouTube is dumb. Yeah, that is annoying. I could probably post it on YouTube. Yeah, true. But, okay. Zeus. Yeah, Zeus gonna Zeus. It's not giving a specific reason. He just says Zeus did it. Should I share the link in here again today? Is this the... Oh, yeah, put the map in the Discord. Yes, please feel free to put the link for the Discord in here. And actually, in the Odyssey book club, I'm going to put the image that I found that circles the area of where that cape is. So there we go. Perfect. Usually first to Dawn is having rosy fingers because Eos resembles the look of Dawn. Does Dawn with her lovely locks also apply both to Eos and the look of Dawn in the way I can't understand? No, he's just saying with her lovely locks. She's got good hair. Her hair was often, I think, supposed to be seen as golden and shimmering. So, pretty hair, pretty sky. Nothing too much there. Oh, hey, Jake, you made it. Okay. Here we go. 9 whole days I was borne along by rough, deadly winds on the fish-infested sea. I'm going to pin that. So the link to the Discord has been pinned. That's what that link is, for those who are not in it and want to join the chaos that's there. Then on the 10th, our squadron reached the land of the lotus eaters, people who eat the lotus, mellow fruit, and flower. We disembarked on the coast, drew water there, and crewmen snatched a meal by the swift ships. Once we'd had our fill of food and drink, I sent a detail ahead. 2 picked men and 3rd, a runner to scout who might live there. Men like us, perhaps, who live on bread. So off they went, and soon enough they mingled among the natives, lotus eaters. Lotus eaters who had no notion of killing my companions, not at all. They simply gave them the lotus to taste instead. Any crewman who ate the lotus, the honey-sweet fruit, lost all desire to send a message back, much less return. Their only wish was to linger there with the lotus eaters, grazing on lotus. All memory of the journey home dissolved forever. Does 2 picked men and a 3rd a runner mean Odysseus didn't pick the runner? No, he picked the runner as well. He's saying 2 picked men, 2 men who are there to basically do the scouting and the fighting, and the 3rd to basically be the go-between, to be the messenger who will run back. What significance is living on bread? The significance being we are bringing in this idea of the otherizing of another culture. Now, we are not monsterizing the lotus eaters, as we will do with Polyphemus. The importance of living on the is the herald. Does Spagels translate that as runner? Yes, he does. Herald, runner, I get what he's going for. Yeah, so Clover, as you can see, the 3rd person was a herald, who essentially also functions as the runner. It's the person who would go with them, announce who they are, what they're about, but also then come back to announce to the remaining crew to be like, hey, here's what happened, here's what we found. Mariana, that is, I believe, what he's translating as runner. So living on bread. The idea of bread, like the pita or whatever, you have this as something that was a big staple of the Greek diet. And so the idea that these are other people who are like us. Are these people who are like us? No, the lotus eaters only eat lotus. That's it. They consume this. Does he mean literal lotuses? Because if so, I need to know more about this. He says it's a plant, a flower. We don't know if, what the lotus is exactly. Put a question mark in. He's calling it a lotus flower. So the idea of the lotus, these lotus eaters are the first example of kind of the other, the strange other, if you will. So the interesting thing is that while this entire meeting can initially seem like a respite, like a rest. It's actually existing as something that would be completely anathema to the Greek hero. Like, this is the complete antithesis of what the Greek hero seeks and believes. That you would forget everything, that you just lounge and eat lotus, when this is, like, when that is your only, air quotes, culture, is just this consumption of lotus, this thing that makes you forget and not care. And achieve nothing. Like, the Greek hero is all about going and doing things, getting kleos, having their name remembered, echoed down through the centuries. Like, the lotus eaters are completely anathema to the Greek hero. But what's interesting in how Odysseus will continue in describing is that he doesn't necessarily talk of them with a kind of hatred, and again, he doesn't monsterize them. Big contrast to what we're going to be getting with Polyphemus, where he presents him as the monstrous other pretty quickly. There's something kind of sad that he sees in the lotus eaters. Like, you could argue there's a kind of condescension. What was the standard of proper Greek when they're not a united country? Shouldn't there be a difference in culture? There are differences, but they did recognize similarities. Let's turn to our forever friend of the show, as we joke, Gregory. I have been told his name, I believe, is something like Hungarian, so I think his last name is actually pronounced like Nadja. So I apologize. I've been saying Nagy because that's what it sounds like. Let's talk about a whole bit here. He has a bit here in his introduction talking about the Greeks. In the ancient world of the classical period, which again is hundreds of years removed from here, but useful, Greece was not really a country or a nation as we ordinarily think of these terms. Rather, it was a cultural constellation of competing city-states that had a single language in common, Greek. And they call themselves in that way the Hellenes. Now, so let's see. Here are some basic aspects of Greek civilization that most ancient Greeks in the classical period, at least, could agree about. So it would be slightly different, but you take an idea of this. Interpolitical festivals, the two primary examples being the Olympic festival, aka the Olympics at Olympia, and the Pythian festival at Delphi. Interpolitical repositories of shared knowledge, a prime example being something like the temple at Delphi, and interpolitical poetry. Two primary examples are set in the poems of the Iliad and the Odyssey, attributed to the prehistoric figure named Homer, and another set of poems known as the Theogony and Works and Days, attributed to a prehistoric figure named Hesiod. So there's an element of similar cultural values and behaviors, even if there are local regionalized differences. We are presenting the lotus eaters as being so different from that. Have lotus eaters always existed? Did people discover lotus one day and their society fell afterwards? Now, a good question. We don't really know, and because Odysseus doesn't really know. That's the thing, is again, because we're getting this from the POV of Odysseus, we only know so much as Odysseus tells us and what he himself understood. You could argue maybe they had a culture and it fully collapsed, and because all they did was eat lotus, or they just, didn't even have time to establish any kind of culture because they just ate lotus. Is this chapter intended to be a transition from civilized world to monster world? Civilized Psychones to lotus eaters, othered but not monsters, Polyphemus full monster. Yeah, very much. Lanthanomai, which is connecting to the nostos here, means let a thing escape one, aka forget. Yes. Yes. Is the Lotus Eater Island magical in some way? No, the island itself is not magical. It's just an island. Here we go. But let's see, lost all desire to send a message back, much less return. They only wish to linger there with the lotus eaters, grazing on lotus. All memory of the journey home dissolved forever. But I brought them back to the hollow ships in streaming tears. I forced them, hauled them under the rowing benches, lashed them fast, and shouted out commands to my other steady comrades. Quick! No time to lose. Embark on the racing ships. So no one could eat the lotus, forget the voyage home. They swung aboard at once. They sat to the oars in ranks, and in rhythm churned the water white with stroke on stroke. So again, he says they're weeping to be taken away from this. This thing that seems like a respite is something that is false, ultimately. It's a mirage in the desert. It's an illusion. Excuse you. In Epic Reaction, you mentioned Odysseus getting stuck on the island of the Lotus Eaters for a while, but this seemed like they were only up for a few hours. Am I misunderstanding this? A few hours is a while. Because he says, they would forget to come. So you can imagine they're sitting there waiting for them to come back. Somebody to come back to tell them what's going on. They sat there and they waited and eventually had to send out more people after them. So they are stuck there for probably longer than they would wish. And longer, especially than they would wish, when this is not an aspect of something like, say, Telemachus going to Menelaus, when you're in a place that is different and othered, and that doesn't have any of the same values as you. You really don't want to stick around. My men got high. I had to be the adult and get them back to the boats, kinda. The rowing splashes. I know, that's why the sea is white. Homer! From there we sailed on, our spirits now at a low ebb, and reached the land of the high and mighty Cyclops, lawless brutes, who trust so to the everlasting gods they never plant with their own hands or plow the soil. Basically, how dare they not do any sort of farming? They don't harvest crops? That's weird. Unsown, unplowed, the earth teems with all they need: wheat, barley, and vines, swelled by the rains of Zeus to yield a big, full-bodied wine from clustered grapes. They have no meeting place for council, no laws either. No. Up on the mountain peaks they live in arching caverns, each a law to himself, ruling his wives and children, not a care in the world for thy neighbor. Lawless brutes, I tell you! Oh my, how dare they! What is going on? Deep, deep judgment. So interesting how he's giving you the Cyclops, and how he'll go even further with Polyphemus, compared to how we just did the Lotus Eaters. How there's a kind of admittedly condescending, but almost sort of pitying vibe to that, versus what we're getting here, where he's just he's stank-facing them out of judgment. It's crazy. Now, pearl clutches, these lawless brutes, literally a pearl clutching moment. Did they know the land was at the Cyclops when sailing, or only found out after stepping onto the island? They likely only found out when stepping onto the island. The point is that they are really off course, and they're not entirely sure where they are. A lot of these islands to them are unknown because they're kind of off the map in a way, which is terrifying to them, by the way, freaking them out like crazy. I was wondering if all this care in describing how the Cyclopes base their production is to justify what happens next. Mariana? Yeah, I fully agree. I think this is an element of where Odysseus as the narrator and Homer as the poet combine, because there's certainly ways that Odysseus tells the story where it seems more like it's Homer talking, because Odysseus would have no way of knowing that, but also he is telling the story from retrospect, and it's very interesting in that regard. If Homer is trying to paint the Cyclopes devoid of culture, why would they still have the culture of family unit of husbands and wives raising children? The big thing isn't the idea of the family unit. It's you have no meeting place, you don't deal with your neighbors, so no Xenia. You don't plow your fields, you don't have a system of agriculture, which would bring in a system of bartering and trade. You literally just hide out in your caves, totally insular. You don't bother with anyone around you. What on earth? Family, is one basic block of society. But the idea is that, the Cyclopes have not gone beyond that. That's it. That's the closest you would get to saying they have culture, but even then, he's just really? Bye, Mary Hughes. Yeah, society norms are improvements over that and things of society. Very much so. They're isolationists even among themselves. Yes. Some of them might we do know that at least the Cyclopes outside of Polyphemus do seem to interact with each other. They just don't give a shit about each other in the way that the Greeks would expect each other to, i.e. looking at something like Xenia, this idea of guest friendship. That concept does not exist. Polyphemus is notably even more isolated than the rest of the Cyclopes on the island, which is why he gets even further monsterized within the encounter. Should he have known they wouldn't have been good hosts? Probably. But again, it begs the question of, is he giving you all this preface, because remember this is Odysseus telling the story, to set you up for what you're going to get in the encounter later? Bag. Oh my god, you want uppies? Somebody should do an uppies counter. for you. All the times you demand to come up even though you left. Like, nothing's gonna change from this view. I promise. Nothing is changing from this view. There you go. There you go. She demands the uppies, as always. Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you. There we go. Now, a level island stretches flat across the harbor, not close inshore to the Cyclopes' coast, not too far out, thick with woods where the wild goats breed by hundreds. No trampling of men to start them from their lairs. No hunters roughing it out on the woody ridges, stalking quarry, ever raid their haven. No flocks browse, no ploughlands roll with wheat, unploughed, unsown, forever, empty of humankind. The island just feeds droves of bleating goats. Again, empty of humankind, devoid of civilization, because at least the Lotus Eaters were humans. It's art fight this month, and I have lots of art to do. This will be perfect background. Okay, hey, Safi. For the Cyclops have no ships with crimson prows, no shipwrights there to build them good trim craft, that could sail them out to foreign ports of call, as most men risk the seas to trade with other men. Such artisans would have made this island too a decent place to live in. No mean spot, if you could bear you any crop you like in season. The water meadows along the low foaming shore run soft and moist, and your vines would never flag. The land's clear for ploughing. As I recall, and I know we will get to, but if Odysseus knew he was in the cave home of a Cyclops, would he have waited as he does and instead just... would he have waited? Civilization, can there be piracy? That's a good question. So Game Wizard, are you saying, like... Okay, but if Odysseus knew he was in the cave home of a Cyclops, would he have waited as he does and instead just leave and move on? Oh! Maybe, maybe not. I mean, he's pretty set on getting his, like, host gift or his guest gift. I don't know. Again, don't really know. It's up for debate. Trust me, this is like, you're all asking, like, great questions, and a question like that is something that, like, scholars love to, and classicists love to delve into. Harvest on harvest, a man could reap a healthy stand of grain. The subsoil's dark and rich. There's a snug, deep-water harbor there, what's more. No need for mooring gear, no anchor stones to heave, no cables to make fast. Just beat your keels, ride out the days till your shipmates' spirit stirs for open sea and a fair wind blows. And at last, at the harbor's head, there's a spring that rushes fresh from beneath a cave, and black poplars flourish round its mouth. Well, where we landed, and surely a god steered us in through the pitch-black night. Not that he ever showed himself, with thick fog swirling around the ships, the moon wrapped in clouds, and not a glimmer stealing through that gloom. Not one of us glimpsed the island, scanning hard, or the long combers rolling us slowly toward the coast, not till our ships had run their keels ashore, beaching our vessels smoothly, striking sail. The crews swung out on the low shelving sand, and there we fell asleep, awaiting dawn's first light. When young dawn, with her rose-red fingers shone once more, we all turned out, intrigued to tour the island. The local nymphs, the daughters of Zeus himself, flushed mountain goats so the crews could make their meal. Quickly, we fetched our curved bows and hunting spears from the ships, and, splitting up into 3 bands, we started shooting. And soon enough, some god had sent us bags of game to warm our hearts. Is this god meant to be taken as Athena? He does say he. Not that he ever showed himself. Now, Mariana will have to tell me if in the Greek we specify like a gender with that article, or if it's sort of neutral. It seems we might still be talking about Zeus at this time, since this is the only god we're sort of talking about in general. Athena does not generally appear in this story during, like, Odysseus' travels. She's not there. So generally, I wouldn't assume it's Athena. Yes. A dozen vessels sailed in my command, and to each crew 9 goats were shared out, and mine alone took 10. Then, all day long, till the sun went down, we sat and feasted well, on sides of meat and rounds of heady wine. The good red stock in our vessels' holds had not run out. There was still plenty left. The men had carried off a generous store in jars after we stormed and sacked the Cyclones' holy city. Now we stared across at the Cyclops' shore, so near we could even see their smoke, hear their voices, their bleating sheep and goats. Are nymphs very different from humans? How are they different from gods? Nymphs are like minor goddesses. And gods. They are highly linked to nature and usually certain places. They are on a lower tier than, like, the Olympians. They're different from humans in that they are immortal. That's the big difference. Did the goats Odysseus' crew hunted belong to one or more of the Cyclopes that have been left out to pasture? No. It seems they roam wild. Hence, you have Zeus's daughters, these nymphs, coming and basically saying, yep, nope, we're getting that all set for you. They run wild. No article, just tales. Okay, so that's why Fagles uses he uses it in a generic sense, but it does seem to imply this is probably still something like Zeus's machinations, since we're talking about stuff affecting the weather. Peg snores, yes, many a peg snore. And then, when the sun had set and night came on, we lay down and slept at the water's shelving edge. When young Dawn, with her rose-red fingers shone once more, I called a muster briskly, commanding all the hands. The rest of you stay here, my friends in arms. I'll go across with my own ship and crew, and probe the natives living over there. What are they? Violent, savage, lawless, or friendly to strangers, God-fearing men? So we're showing here, Odysseus is claiming they don't really know who or what lives on this island. Everything he's told us prior is for context of understanding for what's going to be happening. With that, I boarded the ship and told the crew to embark at once and cast off cables quickly. They swung aboard, they sat to the oars in ranks, and in rhythm churned the water white with stroke on stroke. But as soon as we reached the coast I mentioned, no long trip, we spied a cavern just at the shore, gaping above the surf, towering, overgrown with laurel. And here, big flocks, sheep and goats, were stalled to spend the nights, and around its mouth a yard was walled up with quarried boulders sunk deep in the earth, and enormous pines and oak trees loomed darkly. Here was a giant's lair, in fact, who always pastured his sheep flocks far afield, and never mixed with others. A grim loner, dead set in his own lawless ways. Here was a piece of work, by God, a monster, built like no mortal who ever supped on bread. No, like a shaggy peak, I'd say, a man-mountain rearing head and shoulders above the world. How much of the description of Polyphemus at this point is meant to be Odysseus' hindsight, and how much is meant to be things he guessed from what he saw in the cave? Combination. A lot of what he's giving you of descriptions when we have not met characters, or even descriptions of the island, are him basically setting the stage for what's going to be happening, so that's all hindsight. And how he's describing Polyphemus now, it seems they haven't even seen him yet, so it's hindsight. He's setting the stage for, this is the thing we're going to be meeting. Maybe they were friendly. They were not, and it was, yeah, in fact, friendly. And that's interesting, is the grim loner, dead set in his lawless ways, that he doesn't even mingle his sheep, his flock with others. Again, this is the setup of Polyphemus as the monstrous other of the story. And what's interesting is, although Homer definitely describes them all as being, oh, I had to therapy. Therapy is important. And Becca, thank you so much for that. Yes, go get therapy. Therapy crucial. Absolutely. Come back if you are able after therapy. We will probably still be here. I hope you have a good appointment. So what's interesting is while he does describe the Cyclopes as definitely being kind of lawless, sort of insular, we note very specifically that Polyphemus doesn't even intermingle his flocks, right? Could this be implying that the other Cyclopes do? Like, again, they don't really give a shit about each other, but hey, their sheep all kind of graze in the same spot. But Polyphemus, no, he wants nothing to do with anybody. It's, you could argue, is this in some way similar to how when we talked about the Gigantes or the Gigantes, their leader or king, Eurymedon, is described as great-hearted, that word megalitoros. But the other Gigantes are described as insolent and, forward and rowdy. Versus the Cyclopes, while they are definitely being described as sort of already being the monstrous other, we're taking the time to note that Polyphemus goes even beyond that he is so much more solitary in his nature, and therefore we will expect even more sort of like uncouth and terrible, monstrous behavior. So while the Cyclopes themselves already as like a race, if you will, of peoples definitely are not Greek, they are the monstrous other, we are even further emphasizing the monstrous nature of Polyphemus. And again, this is all being set up to lead the listener. Remember, he is telling you the story. He's so uncivilized. He's leading you in to like prep you for what you're going to be getting. He's already also, you could say, implementing a bias in the listener's head, which like again, an ancient listener would have already when they start hearing what happens, but he's prepping you for it already, which is pretty wild. Arguably also really good storytelling on the part of Homer. Now then, I told most of my good trusty crew to wait, to sit tight by the ship and guard her well, while I picked out my dozen finest fighters, and off I went. But I took a skin of wine along, the ruddy, irresistible wine that Maron gave me once, Euanthes' son, a priest of Apollo, lord of Ismaros, because we'd rescued him, his wife and children, reverent as we were, even while sacking the city. He lived, you see, in Apollo's holy grove, and so in return, he gave me splendid gifts. He handed me 7 bars of well-wrought gold, a mixing bowl of solid silver, then this wine. He drew it off in generous wine jars, 12 in all unmixed, and such a bouquet, a drink fit for the gods. No maid or man of his household knew that secret store. Oh, so you got the good stuff. Only himself, his loving wife, and a single servant. Whenever they'd drink the deep red mellow vintage, 20 cups of water he'd stir in 1 of wine. Okay, so there's a reason I call this wine extract 3000. Was it actually a gift, or did Odie raid the grove? It seems it was actually a gift. He spared him, given that this is like the royal family. He seems to have spared them because they're just raiding. They're not trying to take over. So it does seem this was a gift. There's a reason I call this wine extract 3000. This is extremely powerful wine, okay? When you consider that, yes, the ancient Greeks always drank their wine diluted with water, number one. But the usual proportions from what we've seen were something like 3-1 or 3-2 in terms of water to wine. This is 20-1. That's insanely powerful wine. It also means it's clearly, as we're hearing, of incredible quality. It's highly valuable because it's going to last a long fucking time when you need 20 cups of water to just 1 cup of wine. Your wine, like how is he saying, like 12 jars of it, like that shit's gonna last you ages, considering how much water you have to mix in with it, which would make such a big amount of it. Like, this wine is insane. It's insanely powerful. It's clearly insanely precious. That's why it's a big deal that he got it. And as he even describes, like how, Apollo's holy grove, a grove that dedicated to Apollo, or a grove Apollo favors that worshippers of him take care of. Likely a grove dedicated to Apollo. Similarly to when we were in the Isle of when we were on Scheria, the Isle of the Phaeacians, they had like a grove, and like Athena's holy grove or gardens, like a place that is like part of almost like a temple complex, if you will. It is a spot that is holy for the people who worship there. Could the wine be considered godly or something the gods would drink? No, the gods drink ambrosia. I mean, you could argue this is something that would be of very, very high quality, and maybe you would obviously give to the gods, like as a gift and an offering, but they tend to drink ambrosia. Is that actually physically possible to create, or is this mythical? I have no idea. I do not know the secrets of winemaking. Like, that shit probably was flammable. It was so strong. It's stronger than the Roman wine that you later get that legitimately they do light on fire for fun. How clean was the water if you were drinking it with the wine? Yeah, good question. I don't know. Yeah, Odysseus really does try to give Polyphemus instant alcohol poisoning. Like, yeah. It also adds to the uncouth nature of Polyphemus that he does not want to dilute it. Because that's what a civilized man would do. And what an aroma wafted from the bowl. What magic, what a godsend. No joy in holding back when that was poured. Filling a great goatskin now, I took this wine, provisions too, in a leather sack. A sudden foreboding told my fighting spirit I'd soon come up against some giant clad in power like armor plate. A savage, deaf to justice, blind to law. Again, the monstrous other. Did he really? Probably not. This is, again, exaggeration, artistic license for part of the story. Our party quickly, because, yeah, don't go to the Giant's Cave. Well, the thing is, they don't even realize it's a Giant's Cave yet. Because, again, they say, we're going to see who lives here. All of the discussion we've had of describing the place and who lives here, that's just set up for the audience. Assume that Odysseus and his men don't know. Because they don't. I had insane intuition. Yeah, sure you did. Do we know what ambrosia actually is? It's poured from the magical horn of the goat that created the Aegis? No, these divine things, ambrosia and nectar. No, they're just divine foodstuffs of the gods. Is the party's names ever given in another translation? I heard some translations cut them and there's none in Fagel's. Like, in terms of who's with him in this small crew. Unless they are named later during the encounter, he doesn't list them out here. In terms of other translations, I'm not entirely certain. I'm not sure. And Mariana can tell you if the names are even given in the original Greek. Because it might be a case of he doesn't say who they are here, but later mentions who they are in other books. The point is that ultimately they're going to die, so they're not that important. Well, I mean, a bunch of them are, not all of them. Ultimately, who the crew is not important, with the exception of Eurylochus. He's kind of the only important crew member, because it's his brother-in-law. And he's a royal pain in the ass in the story. Which is why I constantly laughed at how, like, people were like, what do you mean Polites this, Polites that? And I'm like, he's really not that important. Yeah, I was going to say no names. Usually, they will give names if they are there. So, yeah, we don't get the names of the people in here because they're ultimately not important to the story. Most of the crew is not important to the story. Again, kind of except Eurylochus. He's the only one who's really worth mentioning. Just more bodies for the kill count. Yeah, so it's not a question of them not being named in the translation. They're not even named in the Greek. Usually, authors are not going to cut names. If somebody is named, they name them. Names are important, especially in the Odyssey. Our party quickly made its way to his cave, but we failed to find our host himself inside. He was off in his pasture, ranging his sleek flocks, so we explored his den, gazing wide-eyed at it all. Homer probably only mentioned names when the crew wasn't 12 ships worth of people and now only has one ship to worry about. Probably. He does get it, though. It gets gruesome. Oh, alcohol poisoning. Okay, that's what you're talking about. The large flat racks loaded with drying cheeses, the folds crowded with young lambs and kids split into 3 groups. Here the springborn, here mid-yearlings, here the fresh sucklings off to the side. Each sort was penned apart. And all his vessels, pails, and hammered buckets he used for milking were brimming full with whey. From the start, my comrades pressed me, pleading hard. Yeah, must make away with the cheeses, then come back. Hurry. Drive the lambs and kids from the pens to our swift ship. Put out to sea at once. Basically, let's fucking raid. That's what they're saying. But I would not give way. And how much better it would have been. Not till I saw him, saw what gifts he'd give, but he proved no lovely sight to my companions. Odysseus is dead set on getting that host gift. He's just dead set on getting the thing involving Xenia. He's already setting this up. Versus his crew who are like, yo, let's just raid. Why do we even care about Xenia? The thing is, they don't know who lives here. They don't know the type of person or creature. Obviously, they're getting that it's a giant. It's a large person, but they don't really know much beyond that at this point. Not entirely related, but how did family systems work at this time? You'd think someone like Odysseus wouldn't want his sister married to someone like Eurylochus. Political benefits a given. I don't really totally understand the back bit of that question. Why wouldn't he want her married to someone like Eurylochus? And also, Odysseus wouldn't have a say. That would be his father, Laertes. Odysseus is her brother, but he's not her father. Her father has final say. Odysseus got a feeling he would face such a formidable opponent in the cave. Why stay? Sounds like they don't need the cave for supplies. Yeah, he likely didn't get a feeling he was going to face a formidable opponent. The whole point is they don't know who's here. Again, the big thing, remember, don't get lost in all of his descriptions prior to them getting to the cave of basically saying, look at who these Cyclops are, look at how they live their lives. Because at this point, they don't know that. He even says so himself. We heard them. We could hear their voices. But we didn't know what they were. We didn't know what type of people they were. We want to go and see for ourselves. And they likely kid it up only because, hey, maybe they would hunt or do other things. You never know. And be cautious. Like, nobody's rolling around without arms. So the whole thing is always, they're going here because they don't know who lives here. They don't know the type of creature that lives here. They just know it's a giant. That's it. A giant doesn't necessarily mean lawless or a monsterized other. It just means a giant. Third person. This technically is in first person, Smolivia. So right now, this is Odysseus telling us the story. But he's telling it in retrospect. So he's adding tons of details prior to this. So right now, this is all from the mouth of Odysseus. He's telling tons of details in retrospect to set the audience up. To say, by the way, I was asking since he describes Eurylochus pretty negative overall, and so I want to know if he had a say. No, he didn't have a say. And it doesn't matter what he thinks of him. Like, I mean, you never know what Eurylochus was like prior to this. Again, it's been 10 years that they were at war, so we don't know what Eurylochus was like prior to this. Were Cyclops known by then? Yes, they are mentioned in the Phaeacian chapter. Cyclopes were absolutely creatures that existed. We knew that. This is not new. They've been around since, like, the beginning, basically. How many big creatures are there? Lots of big creatures. Lots of big creatures. There we built a fire, set our hands on the cheeses, offered some to the gods, and ate the bulk ourselves. Now, obviously, they would not be able to eat the bulk of the cheese that's there, because it's cheese for a giant. Like, they're taking what would be minuscule amounts compared to what Polyphemus needs. So understand that what they are doing right now, this is going through the ritual of Xenia while you are waiting for your host to arrive. Odie never considered it might be a Cyclops. He has no reason to assume it's a Cyclopes. It's a Cyclops. No reason to consider it's specifically a Cyclops. They don't know where they are. No reason to consider that. Did Odysseus bring the wine purely as a gift to be diluted or a gift poison just in case? Likely he brought it as a gift. It would be a proper, when you do often the exchanging of gifts, it would not be uncommon for a guest to offer something. So he likely brought it because of how rare and special it is. It's in his pack. I mean, one, possibly to drink for himself if he wants. I mean, that would take a lot of water to dilute it, but likely as a proper gift. So is Odysseus lying when he said a sudden foreboding told my fighting spirit? He's likely saying it for dramatic effect to the audience. He's like, well, I had a bad feeling. He would have kidded up anyway. Greeks aren't dumb. You're a stranger in a strange land. You're in kind of uncharted waters. You're kidding up before you go out. That's just basic. Do we know anything about Eurylochus' lineage? Like, was he a high-ranking Ithacan? I imagine if he's someone with the princess, he had to be someone. I really can't tell you much about Eurylochus. I don't really think we know much about him other than he's married to Odysseus' sister, who, yeah, she's the princess, but she doesn't have much power in that role. So, what would be the difference between Cyclopes and giants? One eye. Cyclopes, one eye. It's going to be your big difference. Would it be considered presumptuous for a guest to help themselves understanding if their host isn't there? So long as they don't, or if they're not greedy. If they, if you have all that out for someone to see, if you sit and take something small that would not be a burden unto your host, it would not be considered rude. So long as you are waiting and you offer, like the proper stuff, just you wait about the wine, just you wait. Oh, it's true. To help yourself a little bit, but obviously don't go overboard. There's a line, and it's one of those things where the line is intuitive. In this case, again, they say we ate the bulk ourselves. Wasn't Eurylochus a king? No, I'm pretty sure he wasn't, considering he defers to Odysseus. But since we are dead set, apparently, on finding out about Eurylochus, even though we have not met him yet, I want to note this. No, I don't think he's a king. It seems he's from an island near Ithaca. Literally, we know nothing about him outside of how he is presented in the Odyssey. Like, there is, other than what you get in the Odyssey, there's really nothing more about Eurylochus. He's there to be a pain in the ass, and nothing else. So far as I know, he's not a king. He would not defer to Odysseus the way that he does if he were a king. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, he's from Same. Exactly. Beyond that, we literally know nothing about him. Tells you why he's literally only important in the story to be a pain in the ass. It's possible to refuse to be a host without violating Xenia. Not really. Not really. It's all about kindness to, like, this unspoken contract you have with strangers. Not really. The only way you can refuse to be a host is if the person who comes in violates and is a guest violates Xenia first. Then you don't have to be a host, because Xenia's off the table at that point. It's already been violated. But as a host, if the person comes in and they're doing it all right, you kind of can't refuse without it being a really bad look. Let's see, we settled down inside, awaiting his return. And back he came from pasture, late in the day, herding his flocks home, and lugging a huge load of good dry logs to fuel his fire at supper. My opinion on the whole concept of Xenia? I don't really have an opinion, so there we go. Only if you think the stranger is a pirate. Polyphemus kind of does. Yeah, it's true. Again, Polyportos, the raiding culture. He's not off the mark. He flung them down in the cave, a jolting crash. We scuttled in panic into the deepest dark recess. And next he drove his sleek fox into the open vault. All he'd milk, at least. He left the males outside. This is important, because later the males will be brought inside and it will be part of the escape plan, so keep that little detail in mind. Rams and billy goats out in the high-walled yard. Then, to close his door, he hoisted overhead a tremendous, massive slab. Hold on, Peg, you're getting hot. Honey, if you're getting hot, you need to hop down. It's not getting cooler up here. You're killing me. Fine. I can't help you, kiddo. I really can't make it cooler for you. Let's see. A tremendous, massive slab. No 22 wagons, rugged and four-wheeled, could budge that boulder off the ground, I tell you. Such an immense stone the monster wedged to block his cave. Then, down he squatted to milk his sheep and bleating goats, each in order, and put a suckling underneath each dam. And half of the fresh white milk he curdled quickly, set it aside in wicker racks to press for cheese. The other half let stand in pails and buckets, ready at hand to wash his supper down. As soon as he'd briskly finished all his chores, he lit his fire and spied us in the blaze. And, "Strangers," he thundered out, Now who are you? Where did you sail from, over the running sea lanes, out on a trading spree, or roving the waves like pirates, sea-wolves raiding at will, who risk their lives to plunder other men? So, that whole strangers immediately starts interrogating them. First time we've already violated Xenia from him. Because the idea is used, like, and again, this is Odysseus, like, the Greeks would have understood that, like, whoa! Like, what the fuck? Like, what is he doing? What is he doing? Because usually, you set the guest up with food and wine, you allow them to refresh themselves, you kind of go through the motions, even if they've been waiting for you, you ensure that they're taken care of before you start asking questions. Think back to, okay, Peg, you're panting. I need you to come down. You're getting too hot up here, kiddo. You're killing me. I know, Mama. I'm sorry. Just chill here. So the crew just stood there watching him do his chores. Yeah, they basically scuttled back and hid and watched because they were like, big dude, really big, really huge. Oh, that was bigger than we thought. Oh, shit. Oh, small Olivia. Oh, please tell Peg I love her and use a $10 bill to fan her warm little face. I don't have a $10 bill, but I need something to fan her. Here, we'll take this random thing and offer her some. Honestly, I mean, I keep it at 72. It's actually pretty cool in here. I turn it down for her. We've had a heat wave, though, and she does overheat fast, but thank you, Smolivia, for that. Cue the pearl clutching. Yeah, Caconferontes, bringing bad things. Oh, not the CSI theme song. But yeah, the fact that he immediately launches into questions instead of, like, giving them a chance to try and at least go through the motions, if you will, of Xenia. The Greeks would be like, what a brute! So uncivilized! You know. Kicking my feet, giggling and waiting for, oh, I know. Now you can understand why when I listened to Epic, that bit, I was just like, say the thing, do the thing, do the thing, do the thing. It's so fun. Yeah, please be friendly. Please be friendly. Oh, no. Bruh, why so hostile? Yeah. Would Odysseus be exaggerating Polyphemus' immediate interrogation at all? Maybe, maybe not. Again, the whole thing is we don't know the exact details of what happened with the Polyphemus encounter. We know it was enough that they blinded him. We know then that Polyphemus called, said, my father will hear about this, and made sure his father would hear about this. But that is all we know from the narrator back in book 1. But Odysseus has decided to frame this entirely around Xenia. Now, obviously, Xenia is a concept that is so crucial not only to the Greeks and kind of their sense of identity that they have, but also it permeates the Odyssey. It's in nearly every encounter in the Odyssey. Like, nearly every major encounter where you involve going into someone's home. We have to end up talking about, Xenia in some way. So it kind of makes sense that the story is framed around that concept. And again, by latching onto this concept, this guest-host friendship kind of thing, this ritualized friendship and treatment of strangers, this thing that the Greeks, even though all they really shared was a language, a set of, religions, religious figures they worshipped, etc., something that they all at least agreed upon was something like Xenia. So it's like the moment you want to, do the monstrous other with Polyphemus, it makes sense to rotate around something like that he immediately just starts flagrantly violating and flouting and doesn't care. Because it would set every Greek listening like, oh, well, clearly we're better than this. So uncivilized. Is the name Otis from Altus? I don't think it is, but I don't know the linguistic origins of Otis. Best thing you can do is type in, name Otis derivation, and it'll start taking you down the rabbit hole. Would it be fair for Polyphemus to be immediately hostile, considering they hid in his cave rather than announce themselves and Polyphemus noticed them skulking? I think maybe there's an argument to be made. But they were there. Frankly, maybe they could have been sitting there even if they hadn't gone to hide in the shadows. He might not have noticed them. He's so big compared to them. But yeah, they were kind of skulking and probably should have announced themselves. But even still, the way he immediately launches into the interrogation is No bueno. Does Odysseus already know that all Cyclops are children of Poseidon? Not all Cyclops are children of Poseidon. So that's incorrect. The Cyclopes in general are a race of creatures, but not all of them are descended from Poseidon. In fact, the earliest Cyclopes, if you will, are not said to be children of Poseidon. This one in particular is. The other Cyclopes on the island aren't even necessarily sons of Poseidon, because they will note that. Uniquely, Polyphemus specifically is. Does he know this already? No, he does not. He gonna find out real fast. But I wonder how I would have read and interpreted the story if I didn't know about Xenia being it probably would have been interesting in that a lot of the stuff that happens here might have seemed really confusing if you didn't know about Xenia, because you'd be like, why is this person getting all up in arms? Like, why are they doing this? Why don't they just throw them out? What's going on? I'd be like, yeah, it's one of those concepts where you have to know about it to start reading the Odyssey, because it's in nearly every encounter. Why was Polyphemus an outcast among the Cyclops, which he kind of seems to be? Part of that seems to be by his own choice. The rest of it, it does seem he annoys the other Cyclops, who are already reasonably isolationist. We're going to hear from the other Cyclopes in a bit, so don't worry. We do hear from them. They will show, infamously, they're going to show up. It's all a part of the encounter, which they sort of describe a little bit what they think about him. We don't really know. I'm almost afraid to ask, but in that case, who was the mother? Mari-san, if you want to know, go back to the book 1 book club. We actually say where Polyphemus descends from. We, hear who the mother is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's in book 1 of the Odyssey because Zeus actually talks about it in the first book of the Odyssey. It's Zeus or Athena. I can't remember which. It's one of the two. It's when they're having their conversation. Aren't Cyclops descendants of Poseidon like the Laestrygonians? Specifically Polyphemus's, but not all Cyclopes. Now, by the way, if you're talking about Cyclops in plural, it's Cyclops, but put an E in between that P and that S, the Cyclopes. When you're talking about Cyclopes, the race of one-eyed giants, they are not all descended from Poseidon. Polyphemus specifically is, but not all Cyclopes are. Yes, Smolivia, correct. It's really important with literature like this that you research for historical context or do your best to understand. Many epic poems and or other older, especially older and ancient literature require an understanding of the society it describes. Yeah. And even then, this is being written down at least in the Archaic Age of Greece, and it's describing Bronze Age Greece, which was hundreds of years before then. So while he does his best, he's probably a little off in some aspects, which we kind of know he is in some ways, but it's mostly on kind of minor details. But even still, if I recall, Cyclopes were around either before or during the Titans. Correct. Correctamundo. You can find various stories of kind of their origins and the like, but Hesiod in his Theogony does mention them. I'm pretty sure we talked about this also in book 1, but I'm not entirely sure. I think we did. Hold on. Did we? We talked about Atlas and all these things. I don't see it specifically in my notes, but this is stuff we kind of went into on book 1. So there's that. Are Cyclops immortal? No, I don't think so. I do not think so. What's the bit? This one is OSP's fault. Oh, that all Cyclops. Oh, the idea that all Cyclopes are children of Poseidon. It's a Rick Riordan thing. Damn you, Rick! No, I have no hate for Rick Riordan. It is true. Or if he's the son of Apollo instead of Calliope, that's a big mistake. I remember the story of the Odyssey and Iliad was passed on orally to Greeks have extremely great memory or something. This is something that would have been repeated over and over and over again, these kinds of stories, because again, remember, myth is stories and text that are sacred. This is integrally tied with the religion, so these would have been repeated all the time and eventually become composed into these great epic poems, which would still be considered sacred. Like, this is considered a sacred text to them. So, yes, it's passed down orally, but with great frequency, because it's tied to religion. It's important to remember. Yes, there are three, the kind of like initial three cyclopes are the ones who created the weaponry of Zeus and his siblings. You talked about how the forging titans are different from these titans. Forging titans? What do you mean the forging aren't different? Aren't these cyclopes different from the Hesiod cyclopes? Yes. They are not titans, though. Pokemon, don't call the cyclopes titans. They're not. The titans are a completely different race. So that's important. I know I sound like I'm being harsh, but very important. The ones who created the weapons are different cyclopes. There are all different races. Like, the cyclopes are a race of creatures that go back to the time of the titans. And they're all going to have different parentage, but it's just a race of one-eyed giants. But we know for a fact, from what we are going to hear here, that Polyphemus is uniquely a son of Poseidon. The other cyclopes on the island are not. Yeah, no worries. I get it was a typo, but we gotta be careful. Typos can get out of hand. We don't need an accidental fun fact getting born. The hearts inside us shook, terrified by his rumbling voice and monstrous hulk. Nevertheless, I found the nerve to answer, firmly. Men of Achaea we are, and bound now from Troy, driven far off course by the warring winds, over the vast gulf of the sea, battling home on a strange tack, a route that's off the map, and so we've come to you. So it must please King Zeus's plotting heart. We're glad to say that we're men of Atrides Agamemnon, whose fame is the proudest thing on earth these days. So great a city he sacked, such multitudes he killed. So, it's interesting here that Odysseus decides to only describe himself as part of the anonymous host of Agamemnon. The word, I believe, is Laoi, or Laoi? Laoi. My pronunciation's off, I'm sure. And we come in peace. Sure. Because this description of saying we're part of the host of Agamemnon and then describes what Agamemnon has done, as the leader of this Greek host, it's a thinly veiled threat to Polyphemus. I've got powerful allies. This is the guy I'm with. I roll with the guy who sacked Troy. But at the same time, it is highly unusual that he suppresses his own name. Like, the suppression of the name, given the ethos, if you will, of the Greek hero, this need and value and importance of your own kleos, to suppress your name is really an interesting and unusual choice. He's keeping himself anonymous. Yes, the people, this anonymous people of Agamemnon. He doesn't tell himself out explicitly. He keeps himself anonymous. It's a really interesting and unusual choice. But at the same time, again, it's also a thinly veiled threat. Saying, I roll with this dude, the guy who's probably one of the most famous Greeks, period, right now. He led the host that sacked Troy. That's my ally. That's who I roll with, by the way. Yeah, no, well, big man started by violating Xenia. I, too, would be cautious with my name. Yeah, you could argue what he's doing is being like, I don't like how this is starting already. Well, the blowback likely would not have gone to Agamemnon, because he's saying, yeah, we served Agamemnon, but there were tens of, thousands of Greeks, supposedly, who rode out to Troy. So it's like, that's who I roll with, not who I am, specifically. Yeah, I've got powerful friends. He's literally trying to pull I've got powerful friends vibes. 100%. But since we've chanced on you, we're at your knees in hopes of a warm welcome, even a guest gift. This thing that really he's chasing is the guest gift. It's ridiculous. The sort that hosts give strangers. That's the custom. Respect the gods, my friend. We're suppliants at your mercy. Zeus of the strangers guards all guests and suppliants. Strangers are sacred. Zeus will avenge their rights. Again, Zeus is the god who is tied to Tenia, and who is the god invoked. He is the guarantor of strangers, which again, this is him saying, I've got powerful human allies. I'm also claiming I've got divine right on my side here. This is what hosts and guests do. Like, this is how we roll. I'm setting myself up to say, bruh, you've come in kind of hot. There's a way for you to save this. Eh? And Polyphemus is gonna be like, eat shit. No. Stranger, he grumbled back from his brutal heart. You must be a fool, stranger, or come from nowhere, telling me to fear the gods and avoid their wrath. We Cyclops never blink at Zeus and Zeus's shield. Do you think there's a chance Odysseus could have slipped away if he didn't ask for a guest gift? If they'd slipped away when Polyphemus first came in, and he was doing his chores or whatever, they could have gotten away. But he was dead set on that guest gift. Literally, he wanted the loot, and they all got fucked. How come Zeus doesn't eventually interfere since Polyphemus does break Xenia? Because Odysseus does not invoke him. Odysseus doesn't call out to basically say, avenge me, Zeus. You do kind of have to call on the gods, and even if you do, it's not a guarantee they're going to show up to help you. So there is that. Now, the fool word is actually funny. It's nepios, which is literally infant child. He's like, you must be a moronic child. I love that. Since Odysseus didn't mention getting into suppliant position, are we meant to interpret Odysseus as being somewhat figurative when he described them as suppliants? Yes, it's figurative. He's saying, hey, we're protected under Xenia, we're protected under these rights, but we do not have him describing himself as doing the suppliant pose. Therefore, they are not literally suppliants. It's thrown around a lot in the of course, Nepios is thrown around in the dialogue. Our Nepo babies are arguing. Well, our Nepo baby is arguing with Odysseus. I love that it's thrown around in the dialogue a lot. It's true, Polyphemus did shut the cave. So they were kind of screwed. You could argue they could have tried to get out before he shut the cave. He might have noticed them, but they'd have been out and away. So yeah, part of the problem is right now they're stuck. We Cyclops never blink at Zeus and Zeus's shield of storm and thunder, or any other blessed god. We've got more force by far. So, yeah, again, the whole monstrous other aspect is him disregarding Zeus, essentially, and that aspect of his existence. And what's interesting is normally you'd say, whoa, how does he get away with saying this? Like, Zeus would not take kindly to that. But Zeus tends to kind of ignore monsters, if you will. Like, I mean, in general, like, you know, of course they don't respect him, they're monsters. Unless they are such a threat that he needs to deal with them. He doesn't, like, really see the point, because they are monstrous and others. Yeah, if Polyphemus so disregards Zeus, why is the island so blessed with wild crops? Because he's not the only one that lives on this island. It's a really great island, and it's just got great land. There are those nymphs who are the daughters of Zeus, and that seems to be where a lot of them are. But we have Zeus's own disregard of this potential slight, I think really further reinforces that Polyphemus is meant to be viewed as the monster, as opposed to, like, other creatures that exist around Greece and interact with the gods and definitely, you know, kind of defer to them, if you will. My divine daddy can beat up my divine uncle. But he does note even all the other gods. Because he doesn't just say Zeus. He says, or any other blessed god. He goes, I don't fear any of them. I don't give a shit about any of them. Because he's a monster. What does a monster care about the gods? They exist in a way to stand in opposition to the gods and to humanity. And so Odysseus here is representing humanity. He's representing the Greeks. Again, this is the monsterized other. So we're just really laying it on thick. There you go. If that makes sense. I'd never spare you in fear of Zeus's hatred. You or your comrades here. But invoked his dad after. Not till long after, is he? Not until well after this. After, you know, he's been blinded. So. And even if he did invoke his father, it's no guarantee that Poseidon will do anything about it. Again, you can call to the gods all you want. You can't guarantee the gods are going to answer. I'd never, or your comrades here, unless I had the urge. But tell me, where did you moor your sturdy ship when you arrived? Up the coast? Or close in? I'd like to know. So he laid his trap, but he never caught me. No, wise to the world, I shot back in my crafty way. My ship, Poseidon, god of the earthquake, smashed my ship. He drove it against the rocks at your island's far cape. He dashed it against a cliff as the winds rode us in. I and the men you see barely escaped a sudden death. So at this point, Xenia's off the table, so what is Odysseus doing? He lies. At this point, it's clear that Xenia's at the table. This is the monstrous other. He's like, well, okay, now it's all about survival. Got it. Not a word in reply to that, the ruthless brute. Lurching up, he lunged out with his hands toward my men and snatched two at once, rapping them on the ground. He knocked them dead like pups. Their brains gushed out all over, soaked the floor, and ripping them limb from limb to fix his meal, he bolted them down like a mountain lion, left no scraps, devoured entrails, flesh and bones, marrow and all. We flung our arms to Zeus, we wept and cried aloud, looking on at his grisly work, paralyzed, appalled. But once the Cyclops had stuffed his enormous gut with human flesh, washing it down with raw milk, he slept in his cave, stretched out among his flocks. Yeah, this is why I made the joke instead of pancakes that it's omelettes instead of polities, because he smashes their heads open, then rips them apart. Yeah, the raw milk too, I know. Gotta have your glass of milk before bed. That's horrifying. Yeah, trust me when I say when Homer wants to describe violence, he'll describe you violence. Proof that he's the monster. But not only that, it's that he consumed human flesh. Like, only the worst consume human flesh. So, man, you want to tell me that this is the monstrous other? You can almost say fuck everything that came before. That's almost more than enough. But again, we are driving it home. So here, flung out our arms to Zeus does not imply simply calling him on. They were just like, oh my god, are we actually praying to Zeus here? Often saying fling out our arms to Zeus just means you raise them in despair. Because again, Zeus, sky, Zeus. Fling your arms to Zeus. But he does not say specifically that they are invoking him. And again, even if they wanted to, no guarantee that Zeus will answer. We don't do cannibalism around here, exactly. Raw milk is disgusting. R.I.P. random nameless crewman, exactly. Hannibal Lecter look upon this meal with disdain. How dare he pair these men with trash drinks? Also, just that he bashes them around and doesn't cook them. He eats them raw. Bones, innards, entrails, like all of it. He eats all of it. It's gross. Yeah, that would be why Tantalus is in Tartarus. That is absolutely what got him in so much trouble. And then he just drinks his little bit of raw milk and goes to sleep. Does the fact that he's denying them a burial add to the monstrousness? Yes. There's nothing for them to bury. There are no funeral rites they can do. There's no body. How strong is Polyphemus' teeth to eat bones? Strong as fuck. Strong. The guy described as a monster doesn't pasteurize his milk? I know. I love that this is the most shocking thing going on here. And I, with my fighting heart, I thought at first to steal up on him, draw the sword at my hip, and stab his chest where the midriff packs the liver. I groped for the fatal spot, but a fresh thought held me back. There at a stroke, we'd finish off ourselves as well. How could we, with our bare hands, heave back that slab he set to block his cavern's gaping maw? So there we lay, groaning, waiting dawn's first light. When young Dawn, with her rose-red fingers, shone once more, the monster relit his fire and milked his handsome ewes, each in order, putting a suckling under each dam, and as soon as he'd briskly finished all his chores, he snatched up 2 more men and fixed his meal, aka repeated everything that he did the night before to eat those men. Well fed, he drove his fat sheep from the cave, lightly lifting the huge door slab up and away, then slipped it back into place. Now note, Polyphemus' behavior here is different, because we know before they entered the cave without problem, but now Polyphemus basically has hostages. He does not want his human snacks to get away. So we roll the boulder back. Why was Odysseus the only one to start to try to kill Polyphemus before... why was he alone and why did the other men not join him? They're all probably too fucking terrified. The whole thing is that Odysseus' mind really does work faster than everybody else. So he's like, I got a plan. I'm gonna brush it. Maybe I shouldn't do that. The other guys are all just like sitting there shell-shocked against the cave wall, like, hell. I think Clover's asking, like, why is it only Odysseus? Why didn't the other men join him? They're shell-shocked. Right now, they're dissociating, basically, in the corner. Lifting lightly the huge door slab up and away, then slipped it back in place as a hunter flips the lid of his quiver shut. Piercing whistles, turning his flocks to the hills. He left me there, the heart inside me, brooding on revenge. How could I pay him back? Would Athena give me glory? Here was the plan that struck my mind as best. The Cyclops' great club. There it lay by the pens, olive wood, full of sap. He'd lopped it off to brandish once it dried. Looking it over, we judged it big enough to be the mast of a pitch-black ship with her 20 oars, a freighter broad in the beam that plows through miles of sea, so long, so thick, it bulked before our eyes. So now, a pitchback ship with 20 oars. That's not a pentaconter. A pentaconter, as we know, has 25 oars, technically, 50 men. So with 20 oars, maybe it is a pentaconter. No, that's still not right. It's slightly shorter than a pentaconter, basically. Why don't we call on the gods for help? Because there's no guarantee the gods are going to answer. Call on them all you want. You're not guaranteed an answer. The gods are very much in favor of letting you have to do the thing yourself. Maybe every now and then they'll help you, but they're not even going to give you that much help. How big was he? I imagine he's 8 to 10 feet or something. Don't have an exact size. Huge. Huge, basically. Huge. You could try. Yeah, the likelihood of them answering, though, slim. Quite frankly, slim. Well, flanking it now, I chopped off a fathom's length, rolled it to my comrades, told them to plane it down, and they made the club smooth as I bent and shaved the tip to a stabbing point. I turned it over the blazing fire to char it good and hard. Then hid it well, buried deep under the dung that littered the cavern's floor in thick, wet clumps. And now I ordered my shipmates all to cast lots. Who'd brave it out with me, to hoist our stake and grind it into his eye when sleep had overcome me? Sent me notes. Excellent. Thank you. Bye, Mariana. I'm sad that we must lose you. I'm going to actually grab your notes. That is the wrong email. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at that email later. Notes on book 9. So that's for when we drink. Okay, so we're not there at where your notes come to play, but thank you, Mariana. I am sad we must leave you. I mean, you must leave us. We must lose you. I can speak. Could you call on Athena to help you carry out the plan? You would still have to carry out. Yeah, you could call on her. Again, no guarantee she's gonna help you. Call on them all you want. Like, look, there's technically nothing stopping you. Now, the gods would prefer that you didn't call on them and that you tried to do things yourself. Because if you call on them and they're doing basically most of the work for you, you're really not that great of a hero. So the heroes try to not have to call on the gods unless they absolutely need to. In this case, Odysseus is like, I'm coming up with a plan. I got a plan. Why am I going to call on the gods when I've got the plan? Now, if it comes to the point where he's utilized all of his planning skills and everything else, and he still is, like, stuck to the point that there is no human way to deal with this thing, then maybe he'll call on the gods. Because really, like, how great of a hero are you if the gods are doing, like, all the work for you? You gotta do the thing. What is going on with this argument about Telemachus? Little Wolf never happens. Little Wolf was far away from happening. It's on a different planet. Yeah, Little Wolf never happens in the story. If the suitors do fight Telemachus, would calling on Zeus not be a guarantee still? If the suitors decided to fight Telemachus after what happened in the Quorum, Zeus would absolutely destroy them. Because Zeus sent down the eagles in the Quorum to say, I stand with Telemachus. Telemachus is in the right, when Telemachus is telling you, I'm calling in the bad Xenia, like, I'm gonna do X, Y, Z, stay at your own risk. So even by staying, they doom themselves to die, but if they then try to engage in physically confronting Telemachus, like, yeah, he could just call on Zeus, and Zeus would likely show up for that one. I mentioned before that Athena knew he would make it back. Is this kind of what's happening here? Like, if he absolutely could not get out on his own merit, she would have stepped in. Potentially, if she wanted to. Yeah, I mean, essentially, she said, she's like, I always knew you were getting home. Like, you had it sort of handled. I mean, look, I gotta question your methodology, but you had it handled, basically. Gotta earn some money to buy books and pay phone bills. Important. Yes. Any questions about the Greek text and stuff, do ask. Because she'll watch it later, and the chat is on screen. So bye, Mariana. Thank you for your notes. I have them. Yeah, and the gods in general are very hands-off. They tend to look at humans and be like, kind of want to see what you do. They very rarely step in. These are not the kind of gods that constantly step in to help you. Absolutely not. Which, if that is something from Riordan, please take that out of your mind. Riordan, dang it. No, I have no hate towards Riordan. I just like to tease. Where was I at? And now I ordered my shipmates all to cast lots. Who'd brave it out with me, to hoist our stake and grind it into his eye when sleep had overcome him? Luck of the draw. I got the very good ones I would have picked for myself. 4 good men, and I in the lead made 5. Nightfall brought him back, herding his woolly sheep, and he quickly drove the sleek flock into the vaulted cavern, rams and all. So important. This time, he's bringing the male sheep back in, which is sure as fuck interesting, and something that you have to go, damn, that's awfully convenient for you, isn't it, Odysseus? Is this a bit of Homer and Odysseus taking artistic license? We don't know, but damn, that's convenient. None left outside in the walled yard. His own idea, perhaps, or a god led him on. Then he hoisted the huge slab to block the door and squatted to milk his sheep and bleating goats, each in order, putting a suckling underneath each dam, and as soon as he'd briskly finished all his chores, he snatched up 2 more men, chunk, chunk, and fixed his meal. Did Odysseus have them draw lots because his crew was unruly since his Mars, and I thought this would make them listen better. It's also to make it seem more, like, fair that he's not, like, because, you know, they could likely die trying this. So instead of trying to ask for volunteers when everybody's probably not going to want to, or they all will want to, it's like, just draw lots. It comes down to whoever drew whatever lot. And yeah, it does take him out of the idea of having to order them to do it. Stop eating my dudes. Nah, he's just eating all the dudes. But this time, I carved a wooden bowl, brimful of my ruddy wine, completely undiluted. Oh my god. and went right up to the Cyclops, enticing. Oh, excuse me. Here, Cyclops, try this wine to top off the banquet of human flesh you've bolted down. Judge for yourself what stock our ship had stored. I brought it here to make you a fine libation, hoping you would pity me, Cyclops, send me home. But your rages are insufferable. You barbarian. How can any man on earth come visit you after this? What with you've done? Outrageous. Oh, that's right. Bruh, are you lecturing him while trying to trick him? My dude. After that, he seized the bowl and tossed it off, and the heady wine pleased him immensely. More, he demanded. And a second bowl, a hearty helping. And tell me your name now, quickly, so I can hand my guest a gift to warm his heart. Odie has a weird tactic, offers wine as a gift, but then insults him flat. Yeah, I think you could argue he's just trying to rile up Polyphemus a little bit. Drinks the wine and falls asleep. Okay, so it's not quite where we are. I was trying to see if Mariana's notes came into play here yet. We're close. How much wine did he even bring? I mean, Polyphemus is huge. Even if it's undiluted, it's not going to be much. But also, he's carved a bowl. We can't say he maybe made him a massive bowl. He carved a bowl. Might not be a very big bowl. He did say he filled a whole goat skin, but we don't really know how big that is. It is sarcasm you hear from Polyphemus. Absolutely sarcasm. Our soil yields the Cyclops' powerful, full-bodied wine, and the rains from Zeus build its strength. But this is nectar. Ambrosia, this flows from heaven. So damn, that shit is good wine. It's also fucking undiluted. Ah! So he declared, I poured him another fiery bowl. 3 bowls I brimmed, and 3 he drank to the last drop. The fool. And then, when the wine was swirling round his brain, I approached my host with a cordial, winning word. So, you ask me the name I'm known by, Cyclops. I will tell you, but you must give me a guest gift as you promised. No one. That's my name. No one. So my mother and father call me. All my friends. But he boomed back at me from his ruthless heart. No one! I'll eat no one, last of all his friends. I'll eat the others first. That's my gift. With that, he toppled over, sprawled, full length, flat on his back, and lay there, his massive neck slumped to one side, and sleep that conquers all overwhelmed him now, as wine came spurting, flooding up from his gullet with chunks of human flesh. He vomited, blind drunk. Ew. He's a messy drunk. He's a messy drunk. Okay. Oh. Odysseus. Famously, the Greek word is autis, O-U-T-I-S, which literally translates as no man, sometimes seen as no one. He is claiming in this moment to essentially be anonymity itself. This is obviously going to set up our famous misunderstanding we're going to have later, in which a now blinded Polyphemus is from within the cave crying out to these neighboring Cyclopes who come and are actually curious that no man or no one does him harm. So, I will briefly here quote friend of the show, Gregory Ignatia. The pronoun autis. Now this is important. The pronoun O-U space T-I-S, used by the hero for crafting his false name, deceives not only the Cyclops, but also the monster's fellow Cyclops when they use the same pronoun to ask the blinded Polyphemus this question, perhaps someone has wronged you. So that's important. Keep that in mind. I'll talk more on that encounter there. So this is from Ariana. This is the note around when Polyphemus drinks the wine, falls asleep, and then Odysseus attacks. And it leads to the powerful setup of the chapter that has wine as the centerpiece pays off. We started in Ismaros, and the wine that was drunk in what is known as medial passive tense, the wine that meddled the crew's better judgment, the wine that was the prize for good thinking and acting by Odysseus, the powerful wine that was described at length with such minute details on how you consume it and how it was hidden. This wine that was brought from the ship to be a gift of hospitality, a gift for Xenia, and is recognized as such by Polyphemus in that moment, and instead becomes a weapon to strike down the Cyclops and subjugate his mind, is exactly the way drunkenness brought ruin onto the rest of the crew on Ismaros. Why did they dawdle? They were getting drunk and unruly. So in the Greek especially, it is directly paralleled in how it is written, which is stuff that, of course, Mariana knows better than me, because I am a Greekless reader. This is in stark contrast to Metis, aka how this craft, how Odysseus consciously thinks before he acts. But the mind doesn't have full control over the hero's actions. It's the themos, the spirit, that directs it too. Only bad comes out of stuff when you're ruled by bad thoughts, having a grudge and rage, which we will see later when he starts doing stupid shit. Probably addressed since I'm 50 minutes behind. But is the secret store of wine from Maron supposed to echo Odie's secret wine that Telemachus grabbed in book 2? It could be an echo. It's obviously not the exact same wine, but the idea that there is like a secret wine store that like only some people in the house know about seems that was clearly common enough. You hid the good shit. Wait, if this is a pronoun, does that mean Odysseus did the grammatical equivalent of saying I am he? I am no one. I am it. Except it's not, he's not saying I am he. He's saying I am not he. I am no he. I am no she. I am no one, no man. So I am anonymity. I hear the original Greek makes it sound like Odysseus is saying autis, like it's a pun type nickname of his, is their creditus info. Yes, Sergio, you are correct. Literally. So this is my grandfather's book, which is Man in the Middle Voice, Name and Narration of the Odyssey. And even he will tell you, by the way, this was essentially written by him for other professionals in his field. So like classicists, hardcore classicists. This is not an easy read. I'm not going to claim it's an easy read for you. But he has an entire chapter 6 here, that is called autis, the nomenclature of the self. He's talking about naming and identity and how important it is that Odysseus does this thing with autis. So here you go. It says, for the Greekless reader, aka me, a few words of explanation about the title of this chapter are necessary. In Greek, the word ou, O-U, is the negative of fact and statement, while the word me, aka that M-E with the dash over it, like metis, is the negative of will and thought. Generally speaking, ou is used with the indicative mood for fact, while me is used for non-factual moods, such as the subjunctive and optative. Now, I will note, this is a highly philological book. It's very deep in the linguistics. I'm going to try my best here. But this is important setup because he is telling you kind of about the breakdown of that word. And again, the puns are going to come to really pun when the other cyclopes get involved. The word tis is an indefinite pronoun or adjective. Thus, au, space, tis, would mean no one at all, or no one in particular, aka no man. The name, as we are going to see, that Odysseus gives himself in the cave of the Cyclops Polyphemus. The combination of me, space, tis, would mean the same thing in a sentence with a non-factual mood. But looking just like this combination of a single word, metis. So metis is a word, as we said, that means craft. But if you separate them out into, like break them down, me and tis, it comes to something similar to meaning no man. Again, this pun is going to pun like hell in a bit, which does not translate into English. And so it takes all of this setup and explanation because it really only works in the Greek. It's ridiculous. Yeah, master of pun fu. It's an obscene amount of punning that Homer does, which, as even Fagel says, cannot be translated properly into English. The wordplay is bonkers. But looking just like this combination is a single word, metis, a noun meaning cunning or intelligence, and forming the second part of that frequently used epithet of Odysseus, to which it is often referred, which is the word polymetus, aka the person of much cunning intelligence. The man of twists and turns and all these things. More of the elaborate pun on that word in its place. Let's see if there's anything else here more. Oh, I have to skim through this. A lot of this is highly philological and even goes beyond me. Like, trust me. I love my grandfather, but he does think on things on a level that I cannot quite understand. Okay, the verbal pirate. We'll have to get to that in a bit. Go easy on him and his dad jokes. Yeah, these aren't even dad jokes. This is like wordplay on a whole nother level. Okay, so we're not quite there yet. And we're almost not quite even there yet to really talk about how much of a pun this level of punning does. Because it's like the setup. This is all the setup for the pun, basically. He set it up by saying, I am Autis. Right? He's saying, I am no one. I am no man. Now, in English, you will often see, even in the Fagels, which those who have a copy will notice that I changed it slightly in this version. I think his initial translation had no one. Gets often called nobody. However, it is important to note the phrase and the word nobody would not translate back into autis in Greek, in ancient Greek. The ancient Greek is very specific. So that's why, so while it functions as a synonym in English to our concept of the idea of no one, no man is technically the more accurate translation and one that is probably harder to say nobody. But again, what works in English does not work in ancient Greek. So as much as everybody makes all the nobody jokes, if you were to then retranslate those into ancient Greek, you wouldn't be using the same word. All of those jokes would be lost. Like on the Greece. It'd be like, what's so funny? You don't get it? Because what are you talking about? He called himself autis. Nobody doesn't retranslate back as autis. It's wild. So would it be like the jokes, this book is wonderful, who wrote it? Anonymous. This anonymous is a wonderful writer. Kinda. Yeah, part of the difficulty with translating from the original language is losing the play on words. Yeah, because the word play only works really in ancient Greek. Like, to the level that it does, especially, only works in Greek. Which is tragic. It's the curse of translation, if you will. Now, at last, I thrust our stake into a bed of embers to get it red hot and rallied all my comrades. And let's remember this stake, aka the sharpened end of the club, which we've already set up. He hid it under a whole bunch of shit. Now he's heating it up, literally creating the smell of not only vomit nearby, but heated shit. Thank you, Homer, for that. It's great. The smell-o-vision is just really coming through the text here. Courage, no panic, no one hang back now. And green as it was, just as the olive stake was about to catch fire, the glow terrific, yes. I dragged it from the flames, my men clustering round as some god-breathed enormous courage through us all, hoisting high that olive stake with its stabbing point straight into the monster's eye. They rammed it hard. I drove my weight on it from above and bored it home as a shipwright bores his beam with a shipwright's drill. That men below, whipping the strap back and forth, whirl, and the drill keeps twisting faster, never stopping. So we seized our stake with its fiery tip and bored it round and round in the giant's eye, till blood came boiling up around that smoking shaft, and the hot blast singed his brow and eyelids round the core, and the broiling eyeball burst. Its crackling roots blazed and hissed as a blacksmith plunges a glowing axe or atcha into an ice-cold bath, and the metal screeches steam and its temper hardens. That's the iron's strength. So the eye of the Cyclops sizzled round the stake. Did I mention he really likes his violent descriptions? Why is wood type specific? Is olive important? Olive is I mean, a great wood. Olive trees are very useful. I don't think it doesn't signify anything. It's really not that important. It's more so he can describe it. Because then certain types of wood will smell differently when you burn them. So there is an element of that. I know in some ancient warfare, covering your weapons in feces was common so that even scratches could cause infections, harming enemies, even if not dead. That makes even more sense. And yes, they just popped his eyeball like a freaky egg balloon. Thanks for the descriptions, Homer. Sarcastic, but also honest. Yeah, it's ew. It's a lot of ew. Cause Cheryl'll sure as shit be infected. Yeah. Yeah. He loosed a hideous roar. The rock walls echoed round, and we scuttled back in terror. The monster wrenched the spike from his eye, and out it came with a red geyser of blood. He flung it aside with frantic hands and mad with pain. He bellowed out for help from his neighbor Cyclops, living round about in caves on windswept crags. Did Odysseus heat the sharpened club to cauterize the wound so Polyphemus would be more likely to survive and be able to remove the boulder? No, he did it to pop the eyeball. And the heat would cause even more damage. Because it doesn't cauterize the wound. He pulls it out and blood shoots out, which would not happen if the wound was cauterized. It is a freaky egg balloon. Like, I imagine poking a yolk or, like, puncturing a balloon. It's an egg balloon. It's a water balloon. I don't know. So he's not actually cauterizing it. This has actually just made it more painful. And then burned a bunch of skin around it. Ugh. Hearing his cries, they lumbered up from every side, and hulking round his cavern, asked what ailed him. What, Polyphemus? What in the world's the trouble, roaring out in the God-sent night to rob us of our sleep? Surely no one's rustling your flocks against your will. Surely no one's trying to kill you now by fraud or force. This is where the puns so hard, it's puntastic. Okay. I did all that early setup talking about autis and metis, and there's a reason, because in the Greek, this is where the puns so hard, it's puntastic and comes to fruition. Oh, the puns are insane. It's even better in the Greek. So, to quote again friend of the show, Grandrianace. Again, that pronoun autis, no one, is used, or no man, used by the hero for crafting his false name, deceives not only the Cyclops, but also the monster's fellow Cyclopes, when they use the same pronoun to ask the blinded Polyphemus this question. Perhaps someone has wronged you. The syntax of the question, expressing the uncertainty of the questioners, requires the changing of the pronoun autis, no one, into its modal biform, me, tis. Perhaps someone. Which sounds like the noun metis, which means craft. This thing that we use to constantly describe Odysseus. Again, polymetis, a man of many crafts. The modal biform me, tis, is signaling here by design the verbal craft used by Odysseus in devising this whole stratagem. And that act of signaling by design is made explicit later on when the narrating hero actually refers to his stratagem as metis. Payoff time, you've survived that whole thing. Again, he's claiming to be anonymity himself, and yet we have set up this whole pun so we can bring it to fruition when others ask about it. Like, that's the whole thing. As my grandfather says, the verbal pyrotechnics here have long been appreciated. The way in which the Cyclopes begin two questions with e, aka me, tis, surely no one. The joy Odysseus takes in his onoma, aka the name he uses, autis, and his metis, his cleverness, linking them together as one. The even subtler way in which Polyphemus's words, oh shit, my grandfather wrote this in Greek, because of course he did, by which he means autis is killing by fraud and not by force, is misunderstood by the other Cyclopes to mean no one is killing me either by fraud or by force. And finally, the closing statement of Polyphemus's neighbors, if metis is using force on you, etc., which identifies Odysseus with cunning intelligence, and cunning intelligence with the abandonment of the proper, with the renunciation of what is personally distinctive. And that's basically talking about, again, this suppression and renunciation of his name. The fact that he didn't use his real name. That there's no Kleos ultimately to be had from this because he does not use his name. Like, all of this, the punning, holy moly, Odysseus. Yeah, the level of bringing a pun to fruition cannot be expressed in English. I'm pretty sure, like, if I were to quote here Fagles, what he says on it, which is honestly, he has he says, but Metis, not anyone, sounds exactly the same as Metis. Key word in the Odyssey, main character of its hero, craft and cunning, and Polyphemus is in fact being overpowered by Metis. This enables Homer to make brilliant use of wordplay that cannot be adequately reproduced in English. Like, there's just no way to make this pun as well as it does in Greek in English. The curriculum calls for all of chapter 9. I will say, at least in like American public school, when we studied the Odyssey, you only read small chunks of it, but the whole bit with no one and Polyphemus is one of the major chapters you look at. Why doesn't the Cyclops say a bunch of little guys that snuck into my cave? Because he's only thinking of the one who hurt him as the person who gave him his name. He doesn't know their names. To him, he's focused on no man. On no one. And also, given the way that the Cyclops had formed and, like, structured their questions, he's answering their questions. But, like, because of the punning that's happening, there's even more misunderstanding. So the price to pay for these tons are not getting any glory. Worth it. With descriptions like this, would the Odyssey be considered R-rated? YA definitely doesn't have such descriptions. I mean, probably, yeah. It's the reason they will make children's versions of the Odyssey, or young readers' versions, and not just like the whole Odyssey. Besides the fact that, I get it, it's dense, it's intimidating. So many puns. Oh my god. No man, no one, friends, Polyphemus bellowed from his cave. No one's killing me now by fraud, not by force. If you're alone, his friends boomed back at once. And nobody's trying to overpower you now. Look, it must be a plague sent here by mighty Zeus, and there's no escape from that. You better pray to your father, Lord Poseidon. God, they're so bitter. Can Odysseus really not claim the Kleos from this just because there's no name attached to it, considering there are witnesses, Odie's surviving crew? Remember, I had noted earlier in the chapter, but this is worth noting. This idea of how his Kleos is tied to his craft. What we're seeing throughout the Odyssey is that even situations like this, where this metis of craft helps, advance the Nostos. You only get to claim it if you complete the Nostos. This is all about the Nostos right now. So if you don't complete the Nostos, the Kleos is kind of worthless. Because, that's great, yay, but you didn't make it home, so really was it worth it? Here. Our favorite friend of the show. Witnesses. They all dead. Even as he retells the story of the Phaeacians, no Kleos. We're almost there. He's just got to get home first. Well, especially when you consider the Phaeacians are also pretty isolationist. They don't really deal with strangers. Who are they going to tell? Even in situations where the metis, craft of Odysseus, helps advance the Nostos, or the homecoming of the hero in the Odyssey, as also his sound thinking, which is the word nous, it does nothing to advance the Kleos or poetic glory of his past epic exploits at Troy. A case in point is the decisive moment in the Odyssey when Odysseus devises the stratagem of calling himself Autis, no one, in order to deceive and then blind Polyphemus, the Cyclops. Granted, the stratagem of crafting the false name, Autis, succeeds in saving the life of Odysseus. When the blinded Cyclops answers the question of his fellow Cyclopes, perhaps someone has wronged you, he answers saying, Autis, no one has wronged me. Still, though this stratagem succeeds in rescuing Odysseus and, for the moment, some of his comrades, it fails to rescue the hero's past Kleos in Troy. In fact, the stratagem of Odysseus in calling himself Autis, no one, produces just the opposite effect. It erases any previous claim to any Kleos that the hero would have had before he entered the cave of the Cyclops. Such erasure is signaled by the epithet autidanos, good for nothing, derivative of the pronoun autis, no one. Whenever this epithet is applied to a hero in the Iliad, it is intended to revile the name of that hero by erasing his epic identity. So it's like the fact that he chose this name, Autis, suppression of the self and of the kleos and of the glory and all this even more. It's so wild that he chose to do this. It's like the choice in doing that is, I say highly unusual, and it's like underline, bold that. It's highly unusual, and it's a choice. Such erasure means that someone who used to have a name will now no longer have a name, and has therefore become a no one, an autis. In the Odyssey, the Cyclops reviles the name of the man who blinded him by applying that same epithet, autidanos, good for nothing, to the false name, autis. The effect of applying this epithet completes the erasure of the hero's past identity that was started by Odysseus when he renamed himself as Autis, no one. So Odysseus ultimately suffers a kind of mental erasure. The name that the hero had heretofore achieved for himself has been reduced to nothing and must thereafter be rebuilt from nothing. Again, the puns are punning so hard. There's a reason this particular book and passage gets studied so much. I mean, again, even in like the American public school system, that was pretty much the only book that we read from the Odyssey. But like in scholarship, book 9 gets looked at a lot. Reasons. Not that just the potential players for. Correct. You have to build it back from nothing, but you've used Altis, so that's all gone. It's really not until they leave the cave, and that's when Odysseus chooses to dox himself. But of course it has a kind of inverse effect on him. So the moment he renames himself as Autis, and he holds on to that identity, for the whole time that he's holding on to it, he's kind of erased himself back to zero. So part of why you then get him doxing himself. I know. Yes, he kind of feels like he has to dox himself. It's bonkers. He really screwed up with the Cyclops in so many different ways. Exactly. It's like he's both infinitely so clever, but kind of shoots himself in the foot at the same time. It's like, again, he have reclaimed Kleos without doxing himself. Any of his Kleos from Troy? Not really. At this point, we're saying, well, you chose to adopt becoming no one. You are no one. It's nice knowing you. You're starting over from zero. So the whole thing is that ultimately any Kleos he wants to maintain is going to come from the completion of the Nostos. The fact that Odie went to great lengths to erase himself from the narrative, can it be an evidence that he's in the wrong in the Polyphemus accident? Not necessarily, no. He's being clever. It's insanely clever. But he is choosing to suppress himself out of the narrative. Because in the way that he's describing it, they really did nothing wrong. And all we know from the encounter is that he blinded him. That's all the poet tells us. The poet doesn't tell us anything about who did or didn't violate Xenia, what are the circumstances that led to that, and we know we know Poseidon got mad. But if Odysseus had done something so flagrantly wrong that affected something like Xenia, Poseidon could have also looked at Zeus and been like, he did that in your name, by the way, which would have pissed off Zeus. So, according to the Odyssey, no, Odysseus is not in the wrong. The suppression of the name is just a moment of insanely clever wordplay. And also a moment of, like, trying to show you just how fucking clever Odysseus is. And how he's willing to essentially borderline self-destruct himself and to do things that could affect his reputation, or in this case, erase it, effectually, to get out of a situation this dire, to execute a plan. Essentially. Trying to see if there's anything else here. no, it's far too complicated even for me. I mean, if they did nothing wrong, why do it anyway? Especially since he's so into Kleos. Because it's all part of the plan. I mean, Izzy, come on. If you go in there and say, my name is Odysseus of Ithaca, and you execute this plan, and then the other Cyclopes come in and say, by the way, who did this to you? Odysseus of Ithaca did this to me. They're like, well, then call up to Poseidon. And if he then sicks Poseidon, like, you don't want anybody else knowing that you were all trapped in this situation and this is what you did. Frankly, is there any Kleos in this situation? Not really. You're rolled up into a cave. It started going bad. People died. Yay, you got out alive. You didn't really get anything from it. There's no real Kleos in this entire moment. Like, it's super cool, only because he comes up with the no man stuff. Like, if he didn't do the no man stuff, this entire incident doesn't necessarily reflect well on Odysseus. It's just kind of a, well, shit, that happened. It's part of our adventures, I guess. But it's not anything anybody would care about. It's the fact he plays the no man trick. That's what makes the Polyphemus encounter so infamous and so fascinating, is that he pulled this trick. Was there another way he could get out of the cave that would let him keep the Kleos? Not that he could think of, because he's got to try and get out without Polyphemus noticing. How do you do it without blinding him? And if you're going to blind him, you know he's probably going to scream so goddamn loud that other Cyclopes are going to show up and ask what's going on. Defeating Polyphemus isn't a feat. No, because he wounded him. He didn't kill him. Congrats, you wounded him. And then you ran away. It's really not that much of a feat. You didn't kill him. But of course, in this case, they can't kill him, because they need him to open the cave. And they need him to not see them escaping, which he can see. There's light. He opens the cave at daylight. Men kind of stick out. You're bipedal. You can't pretend you're a sheep. The pun is the only thing that gets them out of here. Like, yeah, they do the blinding and all of that, but it's the whole autist thing that saves them. If he pulled off the trick without doxing himself and then tell someone later, can he still claim Kleos? Can he? Because if somebody then went and asked Polyphemus, he'd say, but it was Autis. It was no one. So technically, no. He's erased that chance for it there for him by pulling the anonymity. But the anonymity is crucial to getting out alive. So he goes, well, I choose getting out alive. It's what makes the whole thing so fascinating, is that he deliberately suppresses the thing about identity in Kleos, because he's like, well, who am I? I'm not a thing. And he does it from the jump, even just by saying, we are one of the Laui. We just sail with Agamemnon. Like, oh, it doesn't say we're from Ithaca or we're XYZ. It's just, we are compatriots of Agamemnon. Oh, Timotheus, you're here to hurt me with more Latin. I gotta try. His lectis multo facilios et intelligere quam obrem, haec gesta non legi possunt quasi actus misericordiae fuerit hic nemo autor. The ultimate. This book, many ways it can be understood. You are testing my Latin so hard, and I was so bad at Latin vocabulary anyway. I'm trying. Sorry, give me a second while I look at this. With many ways it is read, which are not able. Many acts are up to many acts of misery. Okay, hold on a second. From which this gesta can I think that means like either non legi can avoid the quasi actus misericordia. Okay. I've gotten most of them, and I literally only took like one phrase that I couldn't quite get. I think I know what you're saying. And now we're gonna prove how good or not good my Latin is. If I recall, it's like reading this, it makes it really clear that the whole nobody thing and everything that Odysseus does in here are not acts of mercy. That blinding the Cyclops, doing all this, and leaving him alive, that none of this is an act of mercy. this hic nemo, this no one. Utor is, I think, supposed to be like avenging, is basically payback. And correct, exactly. And actually, Mariana notes here the idea that Odysseus consciously thinks before he acts, but the mind doesn't have full control over the hero's actions. It's the thymos, the spirit, that directs it too. When the spirit is aided by Metis and all that, it brings glory and success. But when ruled by bad thoughts, a grudge, or by rage, only kakos, only bad stuff comes out of it. So it's like the moment Odysseus doxes himself, he's not even necessarily doing it to reclaim Cleos, he's doing it because he's pissed. Could the doxing also be Odysseus saying, you don't get to beat me, since it could be argued that Polyphemus steals his Cleos, or Odysseus has to sacrifice it, I guess. Yeah, he's angry. Odysseus is going to dox himself because he's angry. He's pissed off. No shame on Timotheus giving me homework. It's hard because it's like, again, it's been so long since I studied Latin, and I was always really bad at vocabulary that I'm like, I always get scattered words, and then I'm trying to string them together, and then I have to try and remember my grammar too, which Latin grammar makes me want to die. Is that what Google Translate says? I literally was only looking the obrem gesta. I couldn't remember because and oltor was the only other word I was trying to figure out. Like those were the bits I'm like, I can't guess my way through this. But yeah, this is a whole like, I'm so pissed about this situation. Like everything, male ego much. Yes. Ego. Right? It's ego. It is all ego. But also thank you for that for that, Timotheus. Also, okay, wait, I will have to translate that Greek word you put on the front. Admittedly, as a Greekless reader, this one, okay, we're gonna test Google Translate. Oh, hello. Oh, is that kairate? Kairate. Oh, of course. Duh. It's always the X. The X throws me off every time. Woo. Wild. Anyway, Peg would never be egotistical. Never. Anywho, whew, we can tell from that stare, of course. So, they lumbered off, but laughter filled my heart to think how nobody's name, my great cunning stroke, had duped them one and all. But the Cyclops there, still groaning, racked with agony, groped around for the huge slab, and heaving it from the doorway, down he sat in the cave's mouth, his arms spread wide, hoping to catch a comrade stealing out with sheep. Such a blithering fool he took me for. Seems weird for Odysseus to pat himself on the back to the Phaeacians about giving a fake name when he would then have to go on to tell them how he doxed himself. Yeah! At the time he was patting himself on the back. It is a clever trick. He is then also about to ruin it. Do you want uppies? Yes. Up, up. There we go. You're killing me, baby. Yeah, you're uppies. You're uppies. Yeah, there we go. Look, we even got the blankie down. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. 3 uppies so far. That's honestly low for her. That's impressive. Hi, Peg. Everybody says hi. Oh, you say hi, Peg. Yeah, this is, ego and rage. Correct. It's a lot of ego and rage. But I was already plotting. What was the best way out? How could I find escape from death for my crew, myself, as well? My wits kept weaving cunning schemes. And again, weaving cunning schemes. Weaving. Athena, the weaver. Life at stake, monstrous death staring us in the face. Till this plan struck my mind as best. Yeah, Polyphemus' neighbors were yelling at him at the front of the cave, which was still blocked off. Hence, they don't see what's going on in there. That flock, those well-fed rams with their splendid, thick fleece, Sturdy, handsome beasts, sporting their dark weight of wool. I lashed them abreast, quietly, twisting the willow twigs the Cyclops slept on. Giant lawless brute. I took them 3 by 3. Each ram in the middle bore a man, while the two rams either side would shield him well. So 3 beasts to bear each man. But for myself, there was one bellwether ram, the prize of all the flock, and clutching him by his back, tucked up under his shaggy belly, there I hung, face upward, both hands locked in his marvelous deep fleece, clinging for dear life, my spirit steeled, enduring. So we held on, desperate, waiting dawn's first light. At least this is more justified than doxing himself than Epic, which was a half-baked way of showing mercy a la Open Arms Apologies, instead just claiming back Cleos and giving the bird. Yes, it's why I hate the idea that we're apparently supposed to view what happens in Epic as mercy, because it fucking ain't. It's so not. It's nothing merciful. Proper beds, part of the civilized culture. Yes. Yes, they are. What is a bellwether ram? That's a really good question. I don't actually know. Let's find out. What in the heck is a bellwether ram? Did I spell? Oh, fine. I spelled it wrong. Boo-hoo. Oh. Ah! It's a castrated ram. Apparently. The term is derived from the practice of placing a bell on the neck of a wether, which is a castrated ram, at the head of a herd of sheep. Now we know. I had no idea. Fun facts, everyone. But don't tell Amicus and Nestor's sons sleep on mats on the porch. Yes, but they are special mats for sleeping that are rolled out. It's for guests. Versus the person in their home will sleep on some type of bed. Again, this is Polyphemus' home. They're like, why are you sleeping on twigs? It's your house. That's weird. Yeah, so Odysseus doesn't have any balls smacking him in the face. Exactly. His other men, though? Who cares? Bill, the bellwether ram. As soon as young Dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, the rams went tumbling out of the cave. Oh, sorry, rumbling out of the cave. Tumbling would be very different. Toward pasture. The ewes kept bleating round the pens, unmilked, their udders about to burst. Their master now, heaving in torment, felt the back of each animal halting before him here. But the idiot never sensed. My men were trussed up under their thick, fleecy ribs, and last of them all came my great ram now, striding out, weighed down with his dense wool and my deep plots. Stroking him gently, powerful Polyphemus murmured, "Dear old ram, why last of the flock to quit the cave? In the good old days you'd never lag behind the rest, you with your long marching strides, first by far of the flock to graze the fresh young grasses, first by far to reach the rippling streams, first to turn back home, keen for your fold when night comes on. But now you're last of all. And why? Sick at heart for your master's eye, that coward gouged out with his wicked crew. Only after he'd stunned my wits with wine. That no one, who's not escaped his death, I swear, not yet. Oh, if only you thought like me, had words like me, to tell me where that scoundrel is cringing from my rage. I'd smash him against the ground. I'd spill his brains flooding across my cave. And that would ease my heart of the pains that good-for-nothing no one made me suffer. Like we said, the good-for-nothing. That epithet that's tied to Autis. There it is. He's a great composer of music. Did Polyphemus have a favorite sheep, or was that an epic thing? No, he did not have a favorite sheep. I mean, he talks to this one because it's the bellwether ram, but it's not like it's his favorite. It's an epic thing. Yeah, the ram, everyone sure is perceiving me today. And with that threat, he let my ram go free outside. But as soon as we'd got 1 foot past cave and courtyard, first, I loosed myself from the ram, then loosed my men, then quickly glancing back again and again, we drove our flock, good plump beasts with their long shanks, straight to the ship, and a welcome sight we were to loyal comrades, we who'd escaped our deaths. But for all the rest, they broke down and wailed. I cut it short. I stopped each shipmate's cries, my head tossing, brows frowning, silent signals to hurry, tumble our fleecy herd on board, and launch out to the open sea. They swung aboard, they sat to the oars in ranks, and in rhythm churned the water white with stroke on stroke. But once offshore, as far as a man's shout can carry, I called back to the Cyclops, stinging taunts. So, Cyclops, no weak coward it was, whose crew you bent to devour there in your vaulted cave, you with your brute force. Mad, do you know about if anybody ever tried out if it is actually possible to tie oneself to sheep? You know, unless the Mythbusters did it, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, these must have been huge. Slash also, let's remember Odysseus canonically short king. But I don't know technically how physically possible it is. Your filthy crimes came down on your head, you shameless cannibal, daring to eat your guests in your own house. So Zeus and the other gods have paid you back. Yeah, let's also not forget the cannibalism. So, like, almost regardless of anything, cannibalism cancels out literally any shit. Oof. That made the rage of the monster boil over. Ripping off the peak of a towering crag, he heaved it so hard the boulder landed just in front of our dark prow, and a huge swell reared up as the rock went plunging under, a tidal wave from the open sea. The sudden backwash drove us landward again, forcing us close inshore. But grabbing a long pole, I thrust us off and away, tossing my head for dear life, signaling crews to put their backs in the oars, escape grim death. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, literally the, what's your name? Odysseus, king of Ithaca. Fuck you, Odysseus. What's your name? What? What's your name? Polyphemus. Fuck you, Polyphemus. Yeah, it's literally that meme. It's literally that meme. They threw themselves in the labor, rowed on fast, but once we'd plowed the breakers twice as far, again, I began to taunt the Cyclops. Men around me, trying to check me, calm me, left and right. So headstrong. Why? Why rile the beast again? For once, honestly, the crew doesn't sound so stupid. The thing right here is that, again, this is Odysseus being ruled by bad thoughts, his grudges, his rages, so only bad shit is gonna come out of this. Yeah, his men are just like, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. And he's like, no, I'm fucking pissed. Fuck you, Ezekiel. Like, that's literally what he's at. That rock he flung in the sea just now, hurling our ship to shore once more, we thought we'd die on the spot. If he'd caught a sound from one of us, just a moan, he'd have crushed our heads and ship timbers with one heave of another flashing jagged rock. Good God, the brute can throw. So they begged, but they could not bring my fighting spirit round. This Timos, the rage that he has, essentially. I called back with another burst of anger. Cyclops! If any man on the face of the earth should ask you who blinded you, shamed you so, say, Odysseus, raider of cities, he gouged out your eye. Laertes' son who makes his home in Ithaca. Yeah, calls being a moron his fighting spirit. So I vaunted. And he groaned back in answer. Oh, no. That prophecy years ago. It all comes home to me with a vengeance now. We once had a prophet here, a great tall man, Telemos, Eurymus' son, a master at reading signs who grew old in his trade among fellow Cyclops. All this, he warned me, would come to pass someday, that I'd be blinded here at the hands of one Odysseus. But I always looked for a handsome giant man to cross my path, some fighter clad in power like armor plate, but now, look what a dwarf. A spineless, good-for-nothing stuns me with wine, then gouges out my eye. Come here, Odysseus, let me give you a guest gift and urge Poseidon, the earthquake god, to speed you home. I am his son, and he claims to be my father true, and he himself will heal me if he pleases. No other blessed god, no man can do the work. Heal you! Here was my parting shot. Would to God I could strip you of life and breath and ship you down to the house of death. As surely as no one will ever heal your eye, not even your earthquake god himself. Again, the level of just like, shut up. Canonical Short King, could Poseidon actually heal him? You could get someone to. If you wanted to, I guess. Maybe. Probably. Unsure. Yeah, I ain't shit. Nah, you ain't shit. Literally, that's what they're doing here. It's so dumb. But at that, he bellowed out to Lord Poseidon, thrusting his arms to the starry skies, and prayed, "Hear me, Poseidon, god of the sea blue mane who rocks the earth." That honestly makes it sound like he should be some kind of rock star. Love that. A note about saying he has a sea blue mane. Fun fact, that works, because here, Mariana left me a note. It says Poseidon is called dark-haired, the Greek word being kuanokaites, which is kuanos and kaite. Now, kuanos is actually as close as you can get to the word dark blue in Greek, which makes sense. Poseidon is the god of the sea. See, he has sea hair. But if you try to pronounce it, you'll see that kuanos, kianos, cyan, cyan is the fundamental blue color. That's beautiful already. Then we add kaite, which means loose, flowing hair. So he literally has flowing sea blue hair. Dark-haired. Yep. That is cool. Ooh, Mariana, that is a super cool bit. Again, with the wordplay. Fucking popping off, Homer. That is amazing. He is canonically flowing sea blue hair. Does Poseidon not know about the cannibalism bit? I don't imagine he would be on Polyphemus' side if he did. No, he likely doesn't know about the cannibalism bit. Frankly, we don't know if he really gives a shit. I mean, probably that would bother him. But Polyphemus isn't exactly going to mention it. So Audi knew that Polyphemus was Poseidon's son, while he also knew he needed to continue his sea voyage. Yeah. I know. The level of dumb is high. The level of dumb is high. Yeah, everyone take a drink and pray. This couldn't possibly come to bite him in the ass later. It's true, he knew even before he doxed himself, because the other Cyclopes say it. Basically, go holler to Poseidon, your dad, is what they tell him. So Odysseus already knew that. Keanu Reeves is Poseidon. Keanu Reeves is Poseidon. You really didn't think this through. Yeah, your dad is totally Poseidon. Totally. It's like, dude, usually the Cyclopes do have some sort of divine parent or two. Or really two, usually. Oh, it's a bad idea to doubt it. Again, we all shake our head. Easy. If I really am your son, and you claim to be my father, come, grant that Odysseus, raider of cities, Laertes' son who makes his home in Ithaca, never reaches home. Or if he's fated to see his people once again and reach his well-built house and his own native country, let him come home late and come a broken man, all shipmates lost, alone in a stranger's ship, and let him find a world of pain at home. Polyphemus' curse here is something that's going to be echoed by Tiresias in the underworld, but essentially, yeah, that's exactly what happens. What does House of Death mean specifically here? Is it a translation thing? House of Death, we're talking about the underworld. Bringing them down to the House of Death, bringing them down to the underworld. The location where the dead souls are. Diomedes would never. Yeah, this is pretty dumb. Granted, Diomedes might have ended up killing the Polyphemus and getting locked in the cave. We don't know. Diomedes is a cool dude, though. So he prayed, and the god of the sea-blue main, Poseidon, heard his prayer. The monster suddenly hoisted a boulder, far larger, wheeled and heaved it, putting his strength behind it, massive strength, and the boulder crashed close, landing just in the wake of our dark stern, just failing to graze the rudder's bladed edge. Whew, boy, did you dodge a bullet. A huge swell reared up as the rock went plunging under, and the tidal breaker drove us out to our island's far shore, where all my well-decked ships lay moored, clustered, waiting. Does Hades have a physical house? Like in the underworld? Yeah, he likely has a palace in the underworld. Usually when they say, talking about the House of Death, they're not talking about, I'm going to send you down to Hades' palace within the underworld. We just mean, because also Hades is not the god of death. But it's just I'm sending you down to the underworld. Yeah, this is a thick book. We've also had a lot of shit to say about it, too. So there's that. We're almost done, though. Clustered, waiting, and huddled round them, crewmen sat in anguish, waiting, chafing for our return. We beached our vessel hard ashore on the sand. We swung out in the frothing surf ourselves, and herding the Cyclops' sheep from our deep holds, we shared them round so no one, not on my account, would go deprived of his fair share of spoils. Again, we are noting this because it's gonna come into play with Iolus. But the splendid ram, as we meted out the flocks, my friends in arms made him my prize of honor. Mine alone. And I slaughtered him on the beach, and burnt his thighs to Cronus' mighty son, Zeus of the thundercloud, who rules the world. Did Odysseus continue to insult him and give his name because the gods would likely ignore the Cyclops, or all hubris? Hubris! It's all hubris. It is all hubris. Also, R.I.P. Bill. Rip Bill. But my sacrifices failed to move the god. Zeus was still obsessed with plans to destroy my entire oar-swept fleet and loyal crew of comrades. So he thinks. I really don't think Zeus gives a shit. He just didn't bother to answer. Like, again, Odysseus is attributing all bad weather they're getting to Zeus, specifically. It's like, did Zeus really give that much of a shit? Probably not. But he decided not necessarily to help them out. Rest in fleece, Bill. Now all day long, till the sun went down, we sat and feasted on sides of meat and heady wine. Then, when the sun had set and night came on, we lay down and slept at the water's shelving edge. When young Dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, I roused the men straightway, ordering all crews to man the ships and cast off cables quickly. They swung aboard at once. They sat to the oars in ranks, and in rhythm churned the water white with stroke on stroke. And from there we sailed on, glad to escape our death, yet sick at heart for the comrades we had lost. And that is the end of book 9. So much, like I said, so much going on in book 9. Even when people like study the Odyssey in translation in, like, say, the public school system, usually they'll probably do book 9, sometimes only book 9. Book 9 is arguably the most famous part of the Odyssey, without question. And so much to delve into scholarship-wise with just book 9. Wasn't Zeus ignoring all the Greeks trying to get home because of the Trojan War? Yeah, pretty much. Zeus doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care what the Greeks think. He was technically neutral. He's technically neutral, but seemed kind of sided with Troy. So he's just like, I'm gonna ignore all of you. Oh, you want my help? That's too bad. That's so sad. I'm on vacation. Everything you want to hear that I supposedly did, I did not do. Yeah. Any questions on book 9? Any more questions? Zeus is too booked to be bothered. It's true. He's just like, I'm busy. Oh gosh, so sad. Yeah, Odie start. Now, before I start, I must preface this wasn't my fault. Odie at the end of the chapter. Okay, I may have possibly fucked up a little. Zeus, totally neutral. Yes, yeah, totally neutral. Why? Polyphemus' curse is very specific. Is that normal? Yes. It's normal for curses to be uber fucking specific. Uber specific. And again, it's going to be echoed by Tiresias in the underworld later. Was the priest attempting to pull the same stunt Odysseus pulled with Polyphemus by giving the raiders that wine? No. Because as it's noted in the story, it's a gift. Because they spare them and they keep them safe and they usher them away. Like, they don't raid that grove. Like, that whole sacred area and the royal family, they don't raid. So it's actually kind of a, like, thank you at least for keeping, like, not killing us and not making it a whole thing. Did Athena actually abandon him that moment? Athena never abandons him. Athena never abandons him. Ever. Period. Done. Athena is not present physically at any point during this bit of the story. She's just not there. So she never abandons him. Right now, she's probably busy dealing with little Ajax. Well, we found out what Athena thought about this encounter. Jorge wrote a whole song about her being angry. What about in the Odyssey? She's more impressed with his cleverness. She frankly doesn't she doesn't say anything about it. She has no real thoughts on it. I mean, because here's the thing. Let's remember. We already know what she thinks of essentially him and his exploits. Because we had the whole first 4 books. Well, technically the first, 8 books, really, leading to this. Which have all happened after all of this. So that's her saying, hey, we gotta let him go. Hey, we got all this shit. My buddy Odysseus. What version of Fagles am I reading? This version. I think the current version. The only word change you will see is changing nobody to no one. It was a conscious choice. Did Polyphemus eat that prophet? No, he did not. They say the man died of old age. So far, we've only heard about the person in charge sacrificing to the gods. Do people serving under others not do their own sacrifices? They might. Yeah, they absolutely could. Likely they're going to follow their king, and in this case, praying for good weather. Likely that's something the leader, the king, is going to do, so you follow along with that. Also, given that sacrifices involve utilizing livestock, you probably want to clear that with your king. Regarding translations, is there any choices Fagles makes with regards to translation you disagree with, or that the other translators disagree with? The only thing I do find, I find it kind of funny, but almost wish it were done in a different way, though I don't really know how he could do it, is the, what does he call it? The glossing of the Phaeacian names in book 8, where all of the names are actually names, but they translate to something very specific dealing with seamanship. So he does what's called glossing the translation, where he just translates the names. And it makes it funny. It makes you sound like you're listing all the different dwarves out of Snow White. I kind of wish he'd kept the names and maybe had the translation in like parentheses, but that would make it a little unwieldy. And the fact that in this translation he uses the word nobody, I get that he does use it. I know why he uses it. I understand. Personally, I prefer no man or no one. It's really the only thing I can think of. Find interesting throughout the site. How did heroes know when a god decided to be their patron? The god will usually show up and tell you. It's one of the few times the gods will show up and tell you. They will make it clear. Now, they might initially be in disguise, just kind of see if they think you're worthy, if you will. But then they'll skedaddle out in a way where it's like, that was definitely a god. I mean, we've seen Athena do that so many times by now. I do find it interesting that the second kind of crew sort of indicated if Odysseus had done what they said, he'd maybe possibly have had less of a bad time. Yeah, it's the one time, yeah, kind of the crew might have been right. Really, in this case, where they would have been right is, shut the fuck up. Like, that's really the big thing. If they'd gone in and just rated Polyphemus' shit, I don't know. So when Odysseus is hiding under the ram, are his arms and hands hidden in the fleece? Yeah, the idea is that he's, like, gripping it and holding on to it. Yeah. God's leaving in a puff of smoke like a Vegas magician or ninja. Yeah. When did Athena reveal herself to Odysseus? It seems this was way back when. We don't know exactly when. But way back when. He's known, as they say, to have been favored by Athena. I mean, he is also known for being quite clever, so there you go. I mean, so is Penelope. She's said and shown many times to be favored by Athena, and given how clever she is, that makes sense. So, we don't know exactly, like, when she reveals herself. I will say this. Getting into the nitty-gritty of, like, well, when exactly did this happen, like, all of that, you're gonna get lost in the sauce, number one. And two, most classicists will tell you that's really not important stuff to focus on. Like, it's really not that important. Like, we know at some point, she decided, I favor that guy. And understand, the idea of her being, like, his divine patron, it just means she favors him. Doesn't mean she really does all that much, necessarily. But she kind of keeps an eye on him. She favors him. Might offer him assistance to a degree. The sensory time with the fleece, I know. Kneading their hands in the fleece like cats making biscuits. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Love this book. Book 9 pops off. Book 9 is such a great book. Again, it's why it's, like, Book 9 alone is often, like, the focus of just so much scholarship. It's insane. And again, the autist, the no man trick is so infamous, almost even. Like, it is the most famous part of the Odyssey. It's like, oddly so satisfying, even if he does screw it all up later. You're just like, it's so satisfying a trick. Ugh, the Polyphemus encounter is so great. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I've loved it even, like, as I said, ever since I was a kid. I loved the Polyphemus incident. I just thought it was such a cool one. It was such fun. Any more questions? And then we can kind of just, like, hang out for, like, an hour or so. I remember reading somewhere that Odysseus is unique in being favored by Athena because it's 100% his cunning and he has no divine blood per se. How far later is association with Hermes? You're never really going to find a hero who is not in some way related to a god. Because most of the kings and queens are often in some way related to a god. Hermes is his great-grandfather. His grandfather, Autolycus, is a son of Hermes. So he does have divine blood in him. Yeah, it's diluted. But the thing is, the moment a god intermingles with a mortal and that produces children, that child is never going to be immortal. Unless you are the rare exception that is Heracles or Diomedes. Actually, I think even Menelaus, but that's by virtue of marrying a daughter of Zeus. Actually, no, never mind. Yeah, unless you're Diomedes or Heracles. Heracles being the one big exception, Diomedes just getting to follow right behind because he is the dude. On the mother's side is the divine blood, yes. It's on his mother's side. Autolycus is his mother's father. It's really not that unique that he's favored 100% for his cunning. I mean, like, his cunning is what makes him Odysseus. Like, he's known for his neatness, his craft. And so, yes, that is absolutely what Athena notices. More so than anything else. But she's favored many heroes, and not just because of their meatus, if you will. Why did Athena not immortalize Odysseus? It's extremely rare for heroes to be immortalized. Heracles is the number one Greek hero, point blank, period. Nobody comes to compare. He's the model for the Greek hero. Even all the way down to breaking down his name in the Greek. You see how he is the guy. Like, he is the exception to every rule. He's the one all heroes strive to be, but could never actually be, because he is Heracles. And Diomedes is, after Heracles, truly the model of like what the Greek hero was kind of supposed to be. He's incredibly militarily experienced. He just he sets out to do something and he does it. Is he perfect? No, none of the Greek heroes are perfect. Not even Heracles. He uniquely also becomes deified. We're not going to deify Odysseus because frankly he's not that special. He's not. He ultimately isn't that special. Other than his nostos, he's not that special. It seems the big famous adventures are only in a handful of books. Why the disparity between high action and the more political moments? Because Odysseus is telling a story. This is Odysseus spinning a yarn, if you will. You want to make the yarn as exciting as possible. And also, it's the nostos. The nostos is essentially the grand high seas adventure to get home. It's expected it's going to be filled with some sort of crazy stops and adventures and stuff that you did, so you make it exciting. Thank you, Clover. I am happy to be facilitating this book club, and of course Peg is always happy to be Peg. Of course she is. Do you think Polyphemus was being vindictive with the I'll eat you last? It almost seems like he half recognized the trick but was slapping back. He's just being vindictive because he doesn't, like, he is just like, who the fuck are you? Like, oh, you want a guest gift? God, shut up about the guest gift. Again, I'm a brute, whatever. Fine, I'll eat you last. That's your guest gift. So it's vindictive, but not because he clocked the trick. He's just being an uncivilized, uncultured brute. What happened with Diomedes? What do you mean what happened with Diomedes? That's a big question. Diomedes does a lot of shit. Speaking of names, we keep getting hints that there's something significant about Odie's name. That's going to come up later. We're not going to get to that until we are way later in the Odyssey. Because it's not until we have a discussion with Euryclea, the old nursemaid, who we've met back on Ithaca when she recognizes Odysseus and his scar, because we have to meet Autolycus. We have to talk about how he got that scar in the boar hunt with Autolycus and the naming of Odysseus. It's a whole thing. Also, thank you. 5 for chibis. Jeez, thank you. Is then Heracles the standard to hold whether to immortalize a hero? He is not the standard in that regard because he is unique in that he got immortalized. He didn't only get immortalized and made one of the Theoi. Like, Hera does this whole ceremony of like this ritualized, almost birthing kind of thing, so that he kind of then is her son, who she then marries to Hebe. Like, he is unique. Again, he's the exception also to all the rules. So it's like the idea that you're going to get immortalized, like actually physically immortalized, don't count on it. Now, the closest you're usually going to get to immortality, to being immortalized, is your Kleos. It is being remembered and talked about through the centuries because, again, remember, immortality belongs solely to the gods. So, for him to have been immortalized, he was made one of the Theoi. Extremely unique. Extremely unique. Diomedes, the only other one in some stories that Athena asked to then have immortalized because he was that great of a hero. Not really related, but why do you think Diomedes frequently gets glossed over in the retellings of Greek mythos? Because he's there at the same time as Achilles. And everybody wants to give Achilles all the big shout out because he got the Iliad written about him. And then Odysseus got the Odyssey, so there you go. Why did Diomedes deserve to be immortal? Diomedes at Troy was the most militarily experienced of all the heroes. And that includes old King Nestor. Again, old. Been around a long time. Seen a lot. But Diomedes had fought in that many battles. He just kind of went out of his way to seek military battles and experience. He just was kind of he followed all the roadmaps for like what the Greek hero should be. There's a great video on History Hit, I think it is, that's got Roll K talking about like all of these like agree or disagree things. And one of the questions is somebody said something like Odysseus is the greatest Greek hero, and he was like hard disagree, and he actually talked about Diomedes and like how great Diomedes was, and like in terms of like what is the Greek hero. When you think of the Greek hero, it's like, yeah, okay, you have Heracles, but then after that, like you basically think Diomedes. He behaves perfectly in line with the Greek hero and basically always achieves what he sets out to do in the fashion that the Greeks would be like, that's a hero. Achilles got the stories, Diomedes got to live, lol. Kinda. Because, I mean, to be fair, I mean, part of the tragedy of Achilles, he knew going to Troy meant he would die. He made the conscious choice going, I get greater Kleos if I go to Troy, but I will die at Troy. You can't escape that fate. Bet. Like, done. Say less. I'm all about Kleos. Diomedes is the dude. Yo, Diomedes did so much, especially considering Achilles went and sulked for a good bit. I mean, basically the entirety of the Iliad, let's be real, is the sulk of Achilles. So if we go to Diomedes, yeah, so he becomes a king of Argos. He's, they say, described as stocky, brave, dignified, austere, loud at the war cry, hot-tempered, impatient, and daring. And Athena favored him as well. Again, she favored lots of heroes. And that's because she favored his father as well. So she was just like, oh, excellent. Yeah, no, Diomedes does so, like, saying, like, what did Diomedes do? Too many myths to count. Like, too many stories to count. He doesn't have, like, one great myth. There's tons of stories about Diomedes, because he just did so much. What happened to Diomedes after the Trojan War? He travels around quite a bit. He does. He travels around, eventually settles down, and he essentially just kind of dies, and is immortalized upon his death. Did Diomedes have any feats of cleverness? Well, here's the thing. All heroes' feats are feats of cleverness. Ultimately, in some way. It's a combination of cleverness and force. You have to use your brain to carry out the feat of force, because you still have to think your way about how you're going to accomplish the thing. So technically, yes, every feat they do is of cleverness. The thing about Odysseus is he takes that a step further. His cleverness is on a different level. So that's why I say, like, do they have feats of cleverness? Yeah. Anything they did usually is some form of cleverness. If they've got a myth, whether it be Perseus and the Gorgon, Theseus and the Minotaur, well, yeah, Theseus and the Minotaur. Jason with the Golden Fleece, no. So, and even Heracles and his labors. He still has to use his brain and be clever and figure out how he's going to accomplish them physically. So cleverness is always involved in the feats of heroes. Odysseus, again, is just notably so much more clever than everyone else. His brain just thinks at a different speed, and he comes up with these clever ideas that most other Greeks wouldn't think of, because quite frankly, he flirts with that line with just how far are you going to go before people start really looking at you sideways for your ideas. Not to bring this up before we get around to the Iliad, but do you think there's actual intent behind Odysseus introducing himself as Father Telemachus versus son of Laertes in each of the epics? No. No, there's no real big deal about that. The thing about the Iliad is talking about your legacy. So much of the Iliad is about legacy, right? What's his legacy? He has a son carrying on the line. There you go. Versus son of Laertes. No, there's no real thing. Where are the other Cyclopes coming from? Like, on this island? There's more than just Polyphemus on this island. A ton of Cyclops live on this island. In terms of where do the other Cyclopes come from, depends who their parents are. There's tons of different parentage for the various Cyclopes.